Okay. Does it look like it's a little better now? We'll figure that out if it does.
It's still joining.
I mean, the stream already looking somewhat better. It is dropping frames.
Yeah.
Still.
But yeah, I mean, the other time there was like not even visual.
Yeah. Maybe it's just something bad timing or something.
It's still slowly joining. Dun, 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 dun. Dun, dun, dun.
I'm going to send you another link for the stream together, by the way.
Okay.
Because it did seem like it kicked all of us out of that.
Okay.
I'm tired.
Wish it wasn't this complicated. There we go. Sent you the link.
All right. Let's try it again. All right, cool.
Okay, I'm gonna start this chat again.
Taters.
I just it. I was gonna say it, but I can't say it. I can't say it. Alright.
Did you hear me?
Did you hear me? Okay, are you in?
Yeah, no, I'm not.
Yeah, the same password.
I'll try it. Okay.
And then we can just start it over.
Alright. It's attempting to join now again. There. Oh, it said the server was closed. Give me a second. What the hell? Give me a second.
Huh? I could. I think I can invite you from the actual server from Discord. I don't know if that would help.
I'm tired.
But I guess try that if you need it.
Okay. It's just like doing the loading screen right now. There it is. All right.
All right. Did you use the password? Did that?
Yeah. I'm in. I'm just watching the intro.
Sounds good.
I don't know why it always plays the intro for me. So Mario
Well,
hasn't
then you
come out of his
save.
pack.
That's why we didn't get any stars.
It's nighttime though for me.
Yeah, it's 3 in the morning here. Good morning.
And Mario's here. Woohoo! I made it. All right, cool. All right. Let me know when you're ready.
All right. Let's do this in 3, 2, 1. Go!
All right, I'm ready. I'm locked in.
I was playing some music on. Mario Kart World.
Shut up, Blackitude!
Mario Kart World
Get away from me!
actually goes insanely hard. I want to switch to soon, dude.
A Switch 2, yeah.
I
just want to try. I just want to be able to. It's even worse when you have a Switch 2 and I don't have fucking money for Donkey Kong.
I'm kind of glad people like it. I'm not. I don't think it's the kind of game I would like.
You don't think you like Donkey Kong?
No, it's not Donkey Kong. I just don't think I would like Bonanza.
Okay. See, it's the opposite for me, where I've never liked the Donkey Kong game. I never played Tropical Freeze, never played Donkey Kong Country, but this is the only one that I want to play. It's hard to see in the dark.
Edwin, get down on your knees. It's time to see in the dark. Oh my. For those curious, it's my 4th anniversary. My affiliate anniversary today. Not
Really? Today?
No, it was last week. I just didn't stream last week. This is my excuse for such.
Oh, I see. To be honest, I actually don't know what day is my affiliate anniversary. I really actually don't know.
I was gonna do it last week. I was gonna do something else, but I don't know. Mentally, it's been a mixed the last couple weeks. But no, I've been doing alright. But yeah, this is my excuse for one.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, Taters. I remember when Donkey Kong first came out, Universal Studios sued Nintendo because Donkey Kong was too close to King Kong because they were both monkeys.
Isn't that the point?
Yeah, but then the lawsuit was in Nintendo's favor, so they let them keep Donkey Kong and shit.
When they realized...
And now I would say Donkey Kong is more popular than King Kong.
I mean, Donkey Kong, yeah, that's probably the exact reason they got, like, hey, who has last talked about King Kong?
Yeah.
That's my point.
Literally.
No, I think I could like Bonanza. I don't know, I don't know. It's like, it looks like it's a game you gotta invest into.
Yeah, and I want to, because like I said, it's made by the people that made Mario Odyssey, which is my favorite Mario game.
Oh no, I can't do King Bomb because you already did it.
I know, I already got it, yep. It shows, when you go to the menu, it shows the icon of whoever collected the star above it.
Okay, so that actually is a good thing to note, because that makes it like a challenge. If I can actually, like, there we go.
Try to get different stars.
Because we all get the same. I see that we do share it. I just realized.
Yeah, but it'll tell you who collects who in the menu, so that's cool. Come on, fucking Koopa the Quake's gonna beat me.
I do.
Oh my gosh, control so.
I'm listening to the Mario Kart World OST in the background.
Hell yeah.
And I really want to play the game just to hear that music in game.
My shit has no music, it's just silence with Mario sound effects.
Guys, sound request some stuff for him.
Yeah, song request. Oh, actually, it's not. I don't have it. I don't even have it fucking active.
Aren't you doing media requests after this? Media share or something?
Yeah, after this. Yeah.
Guys,
it's not on.
Epic Man.
It's fine.
Epic Man, you should definitely do some wholesome stuff after this. Give him some wholesome stuff to react to. You know what that means.
Yeah, right.
Mm.
Or even urban.
Mm.
Here we go. Yeah, I've been sleeping so much. I've been, like, tired no matter how much I sleep.
That's kind of like me, too, honestly.
That happens to me every summer, especially, like, end of July and August. Because it's like, I'm so, like, done with the summer. August is, like, the last hot month before it starts to get kind of better, so I'm looking forward to that, at least. September and October still have some hot days, but it's not like 90 to 100.
Yeah. I got reminded that this year is going to be Undertale's 10th anniversary. How did that
That's
make
crazy
you
to
feel?
think about.
Yeah.
Maybe well, he's too busy working.
Yeah, it's going to work on no
hard mode.
Wait.
Undertale hard mode.
Who's going to get hard? Yo?
Isn't that crazy, Tanners? And, like, back then, I didn't even know what Undertale was. I had no idea. I thought it was, because, like, the girl was, like, Frisk, I thought it was related to Homestuck. Because, like, that was really popular at the time, too. All those people with, like, the gray skin and, like, the orange horns. So, like, and I hated that shit. I thought, like, all the Homestuck fans were cringe.
Until we Fox did do stuff to that.
I got invited to that. I thought it was related to Homestuck, so I was like, I don't want to go there.
You should have accepted it, dude. It would have been funny.
Yeah, well, yeah, it would have made for somewhat of a memory.
Yeah, no, I wonder if they're going to do any kind of... I know they did a concert earlier this year for it, but...
They should have done another one this year for the 10th anniversary.
I think they did one earlier already. I don't think they streamed it.
Did they? I thought that was for the 5th. Was it really for the
No, they
5th?
did. No, they did. No, they did one for the 5th as well.
Okay.
I just don't know what they're gonna. I feel like he did put something up online for it. I just don't think it's music.
I'm
related.
sure, yeah, like a post or something.
Yeah. Wait, he did the thing where people can put their memories of Undertale. I
Oh,
think
that's
Blue
cool.
Sky. I don't know. It's very interesting though, because you know we all have our fair share of memories.
What's going on, Mario Bros. Fan?
Hey, SMB fan, welcome in. We're doing a race.
There's like a super loud fucking like airplane outside my house.
Brr. But yeah, welcome on in. We're going to be doing this, and then after we do this race, we're going to be playing some miscellaneous games. Let's just say a little compilation
Yeah,
for
there
the
you go.
affiliate anniversary. With all I can say is there's going to be a catch to all these games.
He's gonna play Manhunt 2.
No, but I will note that.
Play GTA 5.
Dude, I already streamed that.
Did you really?
I streamed before. I used to like a lot.
I never. Well, I didn't even know that. I never, to this day, can you believe I've never played GTA 5 ever?
Well, like I
Is that
played
crazy?
it. I used to play it like back in the day at some point, but like I don't stream it then. I did stream it a couple of times, so
That's funny.
yeah.
On like what, console or PC? Or...
I think I did it mainly on PC, but I did try it on like Xbox once.
Okay, okay.
Because you know, like the update they did, the next gen. I don't know. It's just I just did it one day because I was bored.
Yeah.
But yeah, welcome back. I hope you enjoyed the museum. I really want to go to the museum. Oh, cheesecake! Great. I just read that. I'm like, museum cool. Holy crap! You actually went to the cheesecake factory. No,
I have never been there.
I've been to the cheesecake factory. I think twice, but it hasn't been any time.
Really? Is
since
it
then.
good?
I don't know. I love cheesecake, so I'm biased.
Oh, okay, that's true.
But I guess that's my question. Do you like cheesecake?
Not really, unfortunately.
I like cheesecake, but I don't get.
I know they
haven't had it
have
a lot.
other stuff.
Oh yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah. I think it's because when I was younger, like 12, I ate cheesecake, and then the next day I ended up getting the flu.
Okay, so yeah.
And then, like, now when I think about it, I remember, like, how sick I was when I had the flu, so it made me not like it anymore.
Did you kill the Womp already?
I did, I did.
No, I was trying to climb up this entire time. No. Holy crap, dude. By the way, SMB fan, if you're lurking, appreciate it. If you're hanging out, appreciate it too. But like, I was trying to climb up here and they were just talking. And they were like, where the fuck did he go?
He's gone.
He died. He died from waiting.
There.
Uh,
I just ran off the edge.
I guess I should announce this because I haven't formally announced this.
Uh-oh.
But I have a Discord.
Ooh,
I
is that
finally
new,
made.
or
I
have you
finally
had it for a while?
no. I finally made an actual community Discord.
Wow.
Why? You might be asking in chat. It's been in the description now for about a week. But if you
Okay.
guys are curious why I finally made it, it's because in another Discord, people have been making their own Discords.
Oh, okay, okay.
So I said, screw it. If you guys really want to join, I'll make it. And they joined. So I said,
Wow,
hey,
look at that.
I post
It's like
whatever.
a-
Yeah.
It's a rebellion Discord.
It's a Persona 5 Discord.
Yeah.
No, my point is though, if you're interested in knowing when I'm going live, any kind of videos, all that, yeah, join that. I usually haven't joined. I usually don't, and I haven't really considered making one because in the past I had one and I deleted it a long time ago
Oh, okay.
because no one joined.
Okay, well, yeah, that'll do it. That'll do it.
I didn't care about it too much. It was like, why would I have it? No one
Yeah, it's
did.
not like it like costs money or nothing to have. I mean, so it's just like free. So
My stance has always been, if you want it, you can join. If it doesn't, it's not gonna be the road. So I'm using it.
yeah.
If you're interested, go below my stream and you'll see it. But I wanted to finally say that because this is the kind of stream that I would kind of shell out for that.
Yeah, yeah. That's cool.
Oh, by the way, if you're in my chat, before I ask, Zach, is there more open slots
For what?
for the Ouija Smash Invitation?
Yeah, there's still 6 left. I'd like to try to get as many of those filled as possible because the more people, the more fun it'll be. If not, no big deal. I mean, this tournament will still go on. But right now, there's 24 people, which is still good. 24 people is still sick. But if we can get those next 6 filled, that'll be even crazier.
I wanted to do this. It's not the end of the world, because I don't expect anyone. But if you're in my chat, and if you are in this Discord, or want to be in this tournament, because it's a big deal. Trust me.
It is.
I literally,
crazy.
part of the reason I sung Country Roads for the first time ever isn't because of the tournament. Isn't because of the tournament, actually. But it kind of became part of the tournament.
Yeah, literally.
So, in a way, if we can get 3 of you to join the tournament, I'm going to watch the tournament on my stream.
Yeah, of course.
But only if 3 of you guys actually, guys.
Yeah, you gotta register. It's super easy. You just gotta pick a character from Smash Ultimate and type your Twitch name. That's it.
Well, I'm just saying, though, like, if you guys actually want to, you don't have to. Ouija could kill any of us and we won't even notice.
Yeah, literally. The more people that enter, the less chance Ouija has of winning.
Yeah.
So, if,
Ouija's gonna go so hard.
he did last time.
Oh. Well. Yeah. I'm scared.
Yeah, so am I.
Look how we're just saying that in a happy way.
I'm just not 100% sure if it's either gonna be the 10th or the 17th. I'm not 100% sure yet.
Is that both Sundays?
They're both Sundays, yep. Same time, but it's either gonna be the 10th Sunday or the week after that. Those are the only 2 dates. I won't know till probably by Monday. Actually, by Sunday. Sunday I should know.
Okay.
By Sunday I should know 1,000%, and then I'll make it like an event that people can like register in on Discord.
Crap, Luigi, what are you doing? Trying to speed run this level, god damn it. Oh, I swore, I'm sorry. I'm not that worried about that.
What the hell, Mario?
What? Don't I know what goddamn JPEG is?
I just ended up dying. I forgot this program is what I played the Mario.
You do the what?
That would have been taters, wouldn't it? That was almost the coolest thing ever.
I know you use it for the randomizer, don't you?
No, I know that this program has a built-in randomizer, but I actually have a separate just ROM file for the randomizer.
Well, it looks like it looks similar, which I'm kind of surprised.
Yeah, I like the other one more because there's a little bit less input lag.
Okay, so it's kind of like more mint for that.
Yeah. So. Yeah, I use a separate ROM file.
I died.
So did I! What the fuck, Mario?
Oh, hi.
Fuck.
Bounce up your head.
I'm gonna try to race the penguin. I wanna race the penguin first! Fuck!
Wait. So we both race it.
We're both trying to race it. Well, yeah, whoever
We can screw each other
Woo-hoo!
up there too.
I got a head start. Life is extreme as you want to make it. I guess I got to make sure I don't die because that's what happened last time.
I died. Well, I died. Wait, I'm in a bubble? Wait,
Stupid penguin's gonna win, dude. The penguin's ahead of me.
Hey, there's an issue. I'm in the bubble. I'm in the...
How do you... Get away from me, Bubble.
Bubble boy? I can't move. I'm stuck in the... I'm stuck. Screw you, gravity.
Come on, penguin, shut up. Talk to me. Give me the star. Give me the star. Quick.
You're gonna pop me and you're gonna like it. No! 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 No!
That was close. That was so close.
I'm gonna do the other penguin. Crap, you already did. Drats.
Alright. Come here, little penguin. Bring you back home to your mother.
Did you already do that one?
No! I didn't do it yet. I did the penguin race, and then I did the secret slide. Penguin, shut the hell up! 2 hours? Holy shit.
That's cool.
Yeah, that's not a lot of
Get
sleep
some
at all.
sleep.
I slept 9 hours, and I'm still fucking tired. But like I said, that happens every summer. In the winter, I can only sleep like 1 hour, and I'll be fine. But in the summer, I need like as much sleep as possible.
Hey, Zach boy, welcome to the stream. We're racing Zach here. The other Zach. Wait. Wait. How many Zachs are there right now?
7.
Wait, is my name Zach? Holy crap.
Yeah, that's the 7th one.
Collect the 7 Zachs of the level.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you guys aren't aware, my name is actually... Yeah. Which adds a really funny thing about that.
The Jolly Roger Bay area is so creepy at night. It's like a horror game.
Yeah. Alright, you're in my Discord, right.
Aw, snap. We got a Discordian.
Yeah, all good. If you're wanting to lurk, that's good too. We're just vibing. You got me. Was that kind of on this?
Yeah, right? Holy cow, this level's so scary at night. I'm literally swimming in the pitch black. I can't see anything.
Nah, can I think?
Well, he's playing as Luigi and I'm playing as Mario.
We have, so the main mods that we have are the day-night mod, which is just kind of
Yeah.
outside of bad sight. And
Yeah, it's like
we
day and
have
night.
we do have other characters, but we're just using these. I do wonder how bad this could get if we were doing a race with the randomizer.
Yeah, right.
I remember when you did your playthrough of this game with Twitch chat, like when Twitch chat, like the case mod, the original case mod that you had to like.
Yeah, from years ago, where like they
I
could
remember
like
how
blow
scuffed
Mario
that
up and shit.
was. I remember how
Yeah.
scuffed that was before decomp. Like if you guys aren't aware, there's a little story I like showing, where
That took so much effort to get working back in the day.
Yeah.
Like I had to do so much shit just to get that to work.
You guys are lucky if you mod the game nowadays, if anyone's in here. But I used to mod it like before decomp. And you know, it wasn't the best. I didn't know the UV map. I knew how to model, right? I knew how to make some mods. You played some of them.
Yeah, like that one that had like the crazy story.
Yeah, which is I kind of mind fucked that one. But no, yeah, that was before decomp. So comparison to now, I mean, I just don't want to. I like what I did back then. I think I wouldn't regret that. But like, I don't know. That community is something else now.
Really?
I don't know. I feel like I was doing just for like Simple Clips' community at that point.
Okay.
Because that's why I did the mods for, right? It was for its competitions.
Yeah, yeah.
But I don't know. It just kind of felt like I was doing only for that.
Okay.
I don't know. One day I might make another mod, but I really just make my own games at that point.
Yeah, that's what a lot of people do now.
Because I think I could make. I'm kind of like limiting myself in a way.
Yeah, just by doing just Mario stuff.
Yeah. I mean, if I mod, I'm gonna make mod Wii music, guys. Obviously, I'm gonna mod Wii
Yeah,
music.
yeah,
You know
that's
that
true.
one game. Nah, I'm messing around.
I can't see the fucking boat. It's so dark.
Why don't they have electricity in this castle?
Why don't they, or why do they?
Why don't they? There's no lights in here.
Yeah, I have no idea.
Where's the lights?
It was built too long ago.
Wait, does the Mushroom Kingdom not pay their electricity bill?
I guess not.
It's like they don't pay their taxes. Can't believe it, guys.
Damn.
Damn. But I
Fucking ground.
like how Koopa's Road is just bright, but other levels are just super dark. Like Bowser might pay his go, but Princess doesn't.
You've never 120-starred Mario 64?
I
have multiple times.
mean, you speedran it though. Did you?
That's true.
Did you do that in your damageless run?
No, damageless was only 70.
Yeah, you were talking 120, right?
Yeah, not in damageless, but I've gotten 120 like on the normal N64 when it came out on 3D All Stars. I've
Yeah.
done it so many
I
times.
casually did it on All Stars, and I think on the WiiWare, on the Wii Virtual Console.
I would rather 120-star this game than get all 120 shine sprites and sunshine. That's miserable.
Yeah, no, that's better. Because I tried
There
it. I think I
There's
did
nothing
it.
fun about
I think
that.
I probably did do it on the All Stars.
I only did it on my original GameCube copy when I was a kid. On All Stars, I gave up. I forgot how many I ended at.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't want to do this anymore.
I
just
do-
switched to Galaxy.
Yeah, I mean Galaxy was really fun though.
Yeah, Galaxy is way more fun to 120 stars than Sunshine, in my opinion.
I'll be honest. I'm trying to remember. Yeah, I really wanted one day to do this. I'm not gonna do it because it's just ridiculous. I wanted a fully 1,000. Because you know in Odyssey you can buy the moon. the
Yeah.
moons. But technically, I think there's 1,000 moons you can get max, and I can because of that. I wanted to say for shits and giggles to do that one day, but it's like, what's the point after you get so many?
Yeah, it's true. I got 800 something.
I think I got like 600.
Okay.
But, like-
yeah, I ended the game with 800.
That's kind of what it was it just a port, which I don't mind. But like, because at the end of the same day, there's something, because what they did is pretty much Sunshine can now run at 1440p and better quality on the.
Yeah, the funny thing is, even if Sunshine is my least favorite 3D Mario, like, in the 3D All-Stars, that's the one that looks the best, I think. I think it looks
The thing though is just it's on Switch too, right? On the. Is it on Switch too? Virtual Console?
It is. It is.
Does it run? Is it like Mario 64 where it's better? Or is it not? Is the same?
No, yeah, it's better, and it's widescreen, because GameCube wasn't originally widescreen.
It probably is
for
the same
OG.
emulator, isn't it? It probably would be the same emulator.
Maybe, yeah, I'm not 100% sure.
I just know you can play in 1440p. I don't know if you can do that with, you know.
The dumb thing is, when Sunshine comes out on GameCube NSO, it's not going to have widescreen, so that's stupid, but whatever.
Oh, I'm on Bowser! Don't bite my...
Oh no.
Yeah, I'm not prepared to this. No! You know, it's kind of... I'm glad there's... I don't know if there's actually nighttime differences in this in here. But it'd be really scary if there was, like, it was super dark.
Yeah, well, Jolly Roger Bay is. At nighttime, it's like pitch black. All you can see is like the neon eyes.
You jinxed it. Oh my god, you jinxed it. I died.
Damn.
But fortunately, you don't have to redo the whole level, which is a lifesaver.
That is good.
We are in Jolly Roger Bay.
Yeah, I've been in Jolly Roger Bay, collecting as many stars as I can. What's going on, Alexito?
Welcome in, Alexito.
Du-du-du-du-du-du.
Got
on mobile
Mario
right now?
on mobile. Actually, Luigi, actually.
Well, if he was talking to me, it could be Mario. So, because I'm technically playing as Mario, so it still counts.
I should have just turned on Green Mario, so that's Mario, but like green.
It was at first before we reset the
Yeah,
lobby.
I know, which was... I wanted to see how long it took for you to realize.
Yeah. Hurry up, Mario!
I keep missing. I miss.
Is that what the Bowser throw?
Yeah, I keep missing it. Like I feel like getting close.
Shit. Dun, 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 dun. I do not want to get 8 red coins in here. That does not sound like something fun at all. There we go. Cool. Did anybody unlock the wing cap?
I did.
Okay.
I mean, if anyone did it, it would be either you or me.
On your first playthrough, you spend an hour looking for the 8th red coin. Wait, so the wing cap is activated. What the hell? I don't remember getting that at all.
No, because I did.
Oh, okay. I misheard you.
Yeah.
That makes sense. What? The cannon's not opened up? Oh, rip off. Talk to me, Bomb.
So, this is pretty much a mod of the PC version, you know, the version that, you know, kind of we can't tell you how to get, but you can get. But it's pretty much a version that you play online with others, right? I don't know how you would explain it, Zach.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like, if 2 people have the game, one person opens up a server, the other person can join. And it's just kind of like a, Mario MMO. But you can also, like, lock down the servers to just, like, 1 or 2 people, or... I forgot what the max is. What's the max?
I think it's technically 16.
16 is the max amount
You
of
probably
people
could
per
do
server.
more if you really wanted,
Yeah, something like that.
because there's nothing, like, stopping you, but I think that... technically...
Yeah. Yeah, there's also like a bunch of other mods that you can download that make the game different too. Like in this program. It's all on the website. It's different than ROM hacking because you're not like hacking a ROM of the game. You're kind of like, it's like rebuilding the game's source code.
It's kind of like NetPlay if you ever played that, Zach.
Yeah.
We're using the same file in the same game.
Yeah, except it's more than us just sharing a save file. because we can actually encounter each other in the world.
And you can technically hit each other.
You can attack each other.
We just haven't been in the same level that long.
If you're in the same level, you can see each other.
I think if you're in Jolly Roger Bay, because there's
I'm in Big Boo's.
But I think
right
if we're in the same level like that, because there's the same level but different parts of it, I think you can show up like that.
Yeah.
One Mario 1 and Mario 2 Death Battle.
Literally.
Literally. Yeah. Crap! You win for now, Mips! Come and get your butt.
I hate touching them.
Well, I actually went to the character select.
Oh shit.
By hockey, like I was gonna like pounce at him, like I just like that. Direct! Stop putting it! Get back here, you pesky rabbit! This music does not help. It's Wario's Gold Mine from Mario Kart World. Like, it's really funny podcast music, but it's like...
Yeah, probably is not very fitting.
No, it's very stressful.
$19 stars. What's the worst level in the game?
What's up? What's up?
Dude, what's up, Vincent? What's going on, man? How have you been? What is the worst level in Mario? People have asked me this before, and I don't know my answer. I mean, I don't remember what I said. What's a level I don't look forward to playing?
There's a lot of levels that I don't like
I know
because
my
they're
answer.
hard for me, but like that's subjective.
I just thought of my answer is Tiny Huge Island. When I was a kid, I liked it, but then replaying it, I freaking hate that level.
Like the
So
older
I would
levels
say-
itself.
Yeah,
like
all of
versions.
Tiny Huge Island I don't like.
Yeah.
Yeah, Rainbow Kappa, him and I are playing Mario co-op.
Yo, Vincent, what's up? Yeah, I'm trying to get to the
Yeah,
rabbit
killing
right now.
plants. The Koopa the Quick Race in that level sucks way harder than the one in Babam Battlefield.
I don't think that level
the
is
only
like.
cool star for me is Wiggler. I think fighting Wiggler's cool. That's it though. Other than that, I don't like that level.
I think that's one of the levels that I just can't play unless I like sit down and do it. Like, try.
When I play randomizer, I skip it almost all the time if I can.
That's
like,
what I'm saying. It's like
randomizer run.
I
skip.
because if I'm playing like a 70-star run, I always like avoid it if I can.
Yeah.
Because that level
Let's
is
go.
a pain.
I wish I had ice cream. I fucking love ice cream. I want mint chocolate chip, but I don't have any.
I wonder about something because I don't know. Can you,
What's that?
if you open this door and I have nips, can I still go through it?
That I don't know. I actually do not know the answer to that.
Because like
Vincent, do you
it's collision. What's up?
Vincent, do you have a webcam? Like, do you own a webcam at all?
You're talking about a podcast 7%. I don't know.
I just didn't know if he like even had one.
I feel like he would. I mean, I feel
plays any games.
I love the
They
epic
would
man
utilize
one.
it. I don't know if I would own a webcam if I wasn't a streamer.
I thought Mips. Wait, Mips didn't talk to me. I thought Mips did.
Yeah, Mips gives you a star at 16 stars, I believe.
Well, I didn't get.
And then,
I didn't get it from catching him.
oh, that's weird.
Yeah. Or I did, and I just kind of blanked out.
And then if you get 50 stars, he reappears, and he gives you a second one. So you
Yeah.
can actually get 2 stars from Mips total.
Yeah, I'm looking for it, but I guess I might be blanking out. I was wondering who was here.
I'm going in the volcano.
Don't jump in the volcano. You have so much to live for.
Every time I'm here, I just think about that modded game that I was playing where I had the Roblox guy chasing me in the volcano and it sucked. They made the game lag. That's all I can think about.
Oh yeah.
Kill. I would if I had. Anyways.
Here we go!
I don't think you heard me say that, Zach.
Wait, what'd you say? No, I didn't hear it. I didn't hear it.
Honestly, that isn't really that hard, but that's what we talk about. That's the easiest one in the game, I think.
The volcano?
Yeah, like the red point, the 8.
Oh yeah, because they're all like right next to each other.
Yeah, I mean, it could be hard, but you just know how to play the game. But...
Yeah, no, I think out of all the levels, that's the easiest. That's the easiest one for sure.
Joshin. There's a lot of... I just realized there's a lot more one-up mushrooms in the game than I thought. Kinda generous.
There's quite a bit. I never usually even go out of my way to collect them because I very rarely game over these days playing this game.
But I feel like they're being really generous. Like, you don't see that many anymore. Or maybe they were worried this game had been too hard.
Yeah.
Because it is like the first, like, dirty Mario game. Out of curiosity, while we're collecting these stars, is there any anime that you started watching that you would recommend?
Yeah, last night I hung out with one of my friends and we watched the first episode of like a bunch of different shows, just to like get a taste of like a bunch of different shows.
Like a sampler?
Yeah, we just like pick a bunch of shows and we just watch one episode of each of them, just to get like a taste of each thing. And there's this very, very fucking sad anime that I would not recommend unless like you can handle very depressing shit.
Oh
But-
no! What's the name of it? What's the
It's
name?
called Taco P's Original Sin, and it's about like an alien. He's like a little octopus. He just looks like a Splatoon octopus.
Okay.
And his goal is to come to Earth and to like spread happiness. Like he wants to make everybody happy. And he has to, the first person he meets, the first human he meets, he has to make them happy no matter what. And he came from space.
Oh, no,
So
that's
he
bad.
literally comes to Earth, and the very first person he meets is like some little girl, and she gets like bullied at school, and her
Damn.
dad died, and her mom like abuses her.
I feel like
So it's, like, really-
I feel like I know what you're talking about. That's the sad part.
Yeah, kind of like really. So it's like this alien has to try to make this girl happy, and it's like the most depressed girl on the whole planet.
I think I know the anime you're talking about. I only know so much about it, but I know.
Yeah.
I know it.
Yeah, it was really like hard to watch, but I mean I was pulled in, but I was just like, geez, dude, just like I needed to watch something happy after that.
I don't remember the name of it, but there's an anime I watched a while back, or at least started to watch. I couldn't go past like the third episode. It's too messed up. But
Oh, wait, really?
It was about.
What was it
So I'm a big person. I'm a big enjoyer of isekai, right? That kind of anime.
Yeah. Really quick, have you ever seen the vending machine in the other world?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But
Season 2 came out.
yeah. I watched. I didn't know about that. But there's this one anime I was watching. Just because shits and giggles, because I like watching new ones. What? But Shane gets. But so yeah, no.
Vincent, you didn't answer my question, asshole. Go over it.
I'm just, you guys making me fumble. No, there's this one anime though where it starts in the year 1947,
Okay.
and this guy is really into the idea of dying. Like, and it's like he's very poetic, philosophical,
Okay.
very deep. So all he wants is to die with someone he loves.
Wait, is this Boongo Stray Dogs that you're talking about?
I don't remember the name.
Oh,
But
Wait, is it like a guy? Does he have like brown hair and has bandages all over his arms?
no, I think he actually had dark hair.
Okay, then
Like,
okay, then never mind.
it might be.
That's-
It might.
They're just very similar to something that I had seen.
But I don't know. If you like it, I'm not gonna judge.
I don't even remember. I
That's
just
what I'm
remember, literally remember watching a show, one episode of a show, where like a guy was really into like poetry, and then he kept trying to kill himself in the river. So
I think that was it. I think it's that because like he literally like I just want to die, and everyone thought like, holy crap, he's
yeah, but he's
overpowered.
like happy about it, right? He's like smiling.
Yeah, because that's his power is wanting to kill
Yeah, okay,
himself.
so I did see that.
'Cause that's-
I don't know anything about the show, but I also saw
I think
like that episode.
I
as well.
think the literal hook was pain, like death tolerance. Like he can't kill himself, so he's going to, because he's going to keep trying it, because that's how he gets his power is by hurting him. And I was
That's
like around and like, what the fuck are you doing?
I actually did see that. That was years ago that I saw that though.
Yeah, but like I don't think that's like I think there's like a thing like a you know you can enjoy it, but that's just it's just that too dark. It just
Yeah. I just remember being like, "What the hell am I watching?" It just felt like it just felt
felt
like
awkward as hell. Yeah.
But anyways, Vincent, my question was, do you own like a webcam? Or no, do you have like a camera on your PC? Or I know you mostly play like Xbox and stuff. But I was just curious.
You need to webcam on Xbox, so in theory. No, but besides that, I was rewatching cause I'm trying to pronounce it. The you know, I can't pronounce it. Crap.
What's it about? What's it about?
You know
See if I-
the one isekai. You know that the main one. The main one.
What do you mean? There's like a million. There is no main one. I can't. Like a bunch that are all popular equally. I think.
Look.
The main.
Look, I don't know. It just look.
What's it about? Like, what's this?
I can't
guy
think-
character, girl character?
Yeah, the guy carrier. I'm trying to remember the name. Like you know it if I explain it.
Okay.
But no,
It's tiny quicksand.
dude. Look, but no, I was watching that a long time ago. I rewatched the Persona 5 anime the other day. Fully.
Were you there? Oh no, did you watch the direct live with us?
No,
I don't remember.
I think I was.
Okay, I couldn't remember who was there and who was not there. I was so tired. Yeah. I don't remember who the hell was in the chat. But Andrew was actually in the chat randomly. He like never is in the chat, and he was shit talking the Persona 5 anime. I was like, what the hell?
Okay, now my thought is, what does he think of the Persona 4 anime?
He
Because
also hates.
Okay, good. Because if you
But
think
I-
that's good, I don't know.
I've
My
never
friends will
seen-
hate him for that.
Yeah, I've never seen the Persona 5 anime because I want to play the game first. But I watched the Persona 4 anime after playing the game, and I liked it. I would never want to watch it instead of playing the game.
That's
The game is
common.
better. Yeah.
Because people are saying people say the pacing in 4 is bad compared to like the anime. Like if you watch it, you'll.
Yeah, I agree. I just did it because I like just to see like the characters and like just animated.
I
and
do
stuff.
like the anime, but I don't care.
Yeah.
But
The
like,
4. I don't know
do
about
see
5.
it.
I've never seen 5, so I can't say.
There's technically a Persona 3 anime, but it's a movie. It's a movie.
I did. Yeah, there's like 4 movies.
Yeah, but I never watched it because I know how to watch it, and I never got around to it.
Yeah, like the only way I was able to watch it is I had to like illegally download it because there's like not
Pretty much,
anywhere
that's what I'm
available.
saying. There's
Yeah,
not
I
really
was like
dubs.
that sucks. I was
But-
like Persona 4 and 5 anime you can see on like online, on Crunchyroll,
No,
Netflix, whatever the heck. you want.
Technically, 4 isn't
But-
dubbed officially, I think.
Yeah, but then Persona 3, it's like nowhere. You gotta like find it on a shady website. I'm like, why the hell is this so hard to watch?
I think 5 did the best, right? In terms of dubbing and like pacing, like adapting it.
My question, Vincent, was, do you own a webcam? It's the 3rd time I've had to ask you.
Okay, I
Now you
think
go to the principal's office.
you rolled 3 times. Go to prison. Go to prison.
Vincent, would you ever in the future want to be a guest on the Milky podcast? I think that'd be funny.
I think it would.
Would you ever want to be on the Milky Finisher podcast?
You said yes. By the way, Hanatsupo. I can't just butchered that completely.
He said, yeah.
Fuck yeah.
All right. No promises. It might not be for a while, but I will add you to the list. I've got a list of future guests, and I'll add you to it. All right. It's a long list,
The what?
but
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah.
so
Oh yeah.
The list.
the list. I will add you to the list of potential guests.
By the way, the name is Hanatsupo. I butchered that completely.
Oh,
But that anime, yeah.
I love that anime.
I like it a lot.
I never saw the. I haven't seen the third season, but I watched all of season 1
Okay.
and 2.
Yeah, I've
And
watched
I
3
actually
yet.
saw the movie in the theaters. That was really funny.
I never
I-
get the chance to watch that kind of stuff in theaters.
I know, because you probably don't live anywhere near.
I
You
never like.
probably don't live anywhere near.
Well,
you.
I don't also have no one I can really watch it with. When I go to the movies, I want to watch that shit with someone else. Yeah, it's
Sure,
like,
sure.
why would
No,
I
that's
just?
fair.
Yeah, I wanted to watch that one Miku movie a while back that came out.
I
but
know, yeah, I wanted to see that too, but I like.
I couldn't justify it.
Yeah, just kind of ran out of time. But yeah, I have a huge poster. I don't have it up right now because I swap out my posters a lot. But I have a huge poster from that anime. It's
And
very funny.
you know the character?
It's Aqua and Megumin.
Okay,
Both
yeah,
of them.
I'm not surprised, but
No, it's funny you say that because neither of them are even my favorite. I actually like Darkness the best. The
I'm
blonde one.
surprised by that. I'm surprised.
I know, yeah, my friends are too. My friends are like, that's like not who I would expect, but I'm like, I just think she's the funniest one. She makes me laugh the most.
Yeah.
So,
Oh yeah.
Would you be surprised that's not my favorite isekai anime though?
I'm not that surprised because I mean, there's a lot out there, but that one is very funny.
Yeah, that's like one of the mainstream ones I like to think.
Yeah, it's very popular.
Yeah.
When I go to anime conventions, like there's always people cosplaying or there's like merchandise from it all.
What
Popular.
the hell is that? How? Just all the Epstein and like.
I didn't even see Vince's comment. Let me say, you know, everyone on that list is missing, gone, or dead.
Damn. Nah.
That's fine. Now that I invited you, you're gonna go miss.
Cursed. Yeah. It's actually we're in the
Here we
we're
go.
part of the conspiracy act.
Yeah.
No,
Wait, so which one is your favorite? The My Life as a Villainous?
no, but but that's a close one. Yeah.
Yeah, that was good. That's a good one.
No. I think it's over. Tanya the Saga, like the evil one. That one.
That's yeah.
It's very dark, but I also like it a lot.
I never watched it, but I wanted to. But yeah, I know it's like a guy, and then he gets put into like the body of like a
It's
child.
very fucked up, but here,
Is it like what supposed to be World War I or World
it's
War II?
pretty
or
much
something?
so the lore, if I get it, is pretty much it's like a World War II, World War I scenario that got prolonged
Oh.
because magic exists. Pretty much, it's magical
Yeah,
World War I, which is funny as fuck in my. It's
No, I agree. Yeah. No, I've always wanted to watch it. It looks really cool. I knew a couple people that were really into it.
yeah,
I used to have a friend that cosplayed as Tanya.
I want to rewatch it one day, but I just haven't got the chance. But I like it. It's kind of dark because it literally is like saying like this is World War One, but isn't World War One?
Yeah, I can imagine,
World War One. But like, the biggest thing about that is I didn't like how the ending was because it's kind of but like for what it was as good as they're gonna get.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. Yeah, no, I wanna check it out for sure.
But I don't know. Have you seen Isekai Quartet? That
Yes.
that
And,
they're in that.
That's got characters. Yeah,
yeah.
she's in that, and then it's with the big skeleton guy from Overlord
Yeah.
and Konosuba. So
Yeah.
it's like got a bunch of people. I've never seen Overlord
And then
either. so-
ReZero I think is in there as well.
Yeah, ReZero, which I've never seen either, but I talked
Yeah.
about it before on my stream.
I think I watched ReZero. I don't know. But that's like one of the first ones I watched after I got it.
ReZero?
Yeah. Cause
I want to watch it just because I like anything that has to do with like time travel, and I know it
Yeah.
has to do.
I think it's like it's pretty much like a redo, like that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
Which I love. Yeah. If I
yeah. I mean, you're talking to a guy who loves Majora's Mask, so it's like pretty much the same thing.
if I ever did that's kind of what the thing is. If if I ever did like a game or like a story in the vein like an isekai, because that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
There's a lot of games out there, but there's no isekai games. They're like.
It is true. Yeah.
There's games like
Oh,
adapted from like there's.
I did think of one, but it's a really bad one. It got horrible reviews and sold bad. But there actually is one isekai game, and that's that horrible. It was on like PlayStation stuff. It's called like Forsaken, Forspoken, or whatever.
I don't count that.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I don't count
that one. That was
I'm
a
talking about
bad
isekai.
one,
I don't not talking about the plot like the trope of isekai. I'm talking about like anime.
Oh yeah.
Talking about like the presentation and the style of it.
Yeah.
Because there's like there's like spin-off I can't not sure if I pronounce, but you know what, the Kanasba.
Yeah.
But,
Yes. Yeah.
but it's a visual novel, which that's pretty much what the whole a tome subgenre is. Like
Yeah.
But I'm kind of surprised that there isn't any games, like kind of like Persona, where it's like an RPG.
Yes.
But
No, don't get sucked in the vortex.
Okay, I need to clarify. There is one game like that, and it's
Okay.
Genshin Impact out of all games.
Oh, you're actually right. Yeah, you're
And
actually right. I didn't think about that.
I never played it because it's kind of the same as you Phantom X's, and I just never got around to it. But I love the idea of Genshin Impact story in like style and everything. But
Yeah.
I can't get down with gacha games.
Yeah.
Because because it's not even that because of the microtransactions. Because I'm okay with spending money. I don't care about that. But
Yeah.
the games are made for mobile, and I just don't like mobile games. Hot take.
Same. Yeah. It's like, why the hell is Persona 5 Phantom X still not on consoles? Like, why?
It is on Steam, but the issue is that I streamed
No,
it
I know.
sometimes.
So, like, it should be on Switch 2 and PlayStation 5, I think.
Also, I think Phantom X is hard for me to play because there's like a big old button saying skip everything. And then I don't know how the story goes because like I actually click it.
Can I sign your petition to stop the government from requiring ID to sign into websites like YouTube? I thought that's only in the UK.
Yeah, and isn't there like that one workaround where if you're playing like Death Stranding, you can like...
Yeah, I couldn't believe
What
that.
the
Yeah,
fuck?
if you take a picture of the main character from Death Stranding, it registers as like a human face, so you could just like bypass it. I've been on YouTube and all the websites, and they haven't asked me for shit.
Wait, wrong message. Wrong.
They haven't asked me for any identification on any of stuff.
You're so lucky I can't like manually pin that message right now, Zach.
You said it starts on August 27th. Are you sure, dude? You sure that's in the USA? I don't think that's true.
I don't think that's true.
I think it's only in the UK, bro.
If it was, I would...
Yeah, we would have like
I'm not
heard
gonna
about
say
it.
I'm not gonna say what I was gonna do. I think I have this. There we go. We got 4. Yeah, guys. Actually, I had Quotebot. I just never used it. Yeah. Yeah, I got provided for that. That's a real quote, guys, for like 2017.
Damn.
Yeah. No, but I kind of want to do that. That's not kind of the idea of the game I'm doing right now, but I really want to do a game that's kind of like Majora's Mask in terms of like, it's an N64 game, right?
Okay.
But it's an isekai, so it's like, if that makes sense.
Technically, Majora's Mask is kind of an isekai because he comes from Hyrule.
Holy shit, yeah, that kind of, because no one knows who they are, yeah.
It's kind of, if you really think about it, kind of.
Yeah, but I guess you never think about that, yeah.
Yeah, I never did my whole life in this moment.
Holy crap, they did isekai before it
Before it was popular.
was
Steve,
popular.
Majora's Mask was ahead of its time.
Duncan hat, donut, hacks,
Duncan Round.
Duncan Rampa, click their shirt.
Yeah, I love that shirt. I hope it never gets destroyed because I can't find that for sale anywhere else. I got it like one time at a convention. I'll never. It's like if I lose that shirt, I'm never gonna get another one.
Yeah, but I might taste right after stream. I might start watching Tanya again.
You might start watching what?
The rewatching Tanya.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. It's just kind of been the mood. It's been better. It's been good for me.
Cool. Yeah. I need to find a new show to watch too now. I finished all the shows that I was watching, so I need to find like I know I just got done watching the first episode, but I need to find an actual What do you mean too long? Check Discord. What the hell are you talking about?
All right.
You talking about the law? I can't check right now. I'm in the middle of a race, bro.
How are we doing against stars, by the way? Like, I kind of...
Alright. Yeah.
I don't know. We'd have to tally it up at the end.
Yeah, I know we have 30.
I've just been like...
Yeah,
we've been blanked out.
That's kind of me
Like
too.
as many as I can.
I fear.
Yeah, what? Ho! Mario, quit falling down!
How was the fall?
Horrible.
My legs.
It's like that. It's like Got Milk commercial where Mario keeps smacking his head on the bricks. Like, jump, Mario, jump!
How jump you have so much? Oh, he broke his head.
And then he eats milk, and then he beats the level easily.
Bro, I can't believe that Lucky Duck guy put my Animal Crossing crush, and now you can't stop sending me art.
Haters, can you remind me again who your Animal Crossing crush is? I'm almost positive you said it, I just can't remember. Sasha? Oh, I forgot about that. I am gonna judge you hard for that one. That's just a fat little gay boy.
Okay, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I had my.
We lost all of our sponsors. No, I'm kidding.
I mean, I would give you my 2 cents on that, but I need to make sure before I say it. Who would you hate? Who do you not want me to say?
From what? Animal Crossing?
Yeah. Who would you not want me to be crushing over?
You're talking to the wrong guy. I'm not a furry, so I think
I'm not a furry, but
I think being attracted to any Animal Crossing character other than Anka is sick.
Okay,
so I literally only like Anka. I think all the other.
Okay, so I will not comment on this up here. Sorry, Peter.
Want me to troll him?
Mods, troll him.
Mods, troll that guy. Yeah, I'm trying to think of the worst Animal Crossing character. I guess the worst one, Taters. That's not the worst one by a long shot. I think that if you like Cappen's probably the worst.
Oh, he's over.
If you have a crush on Cappen, that's pretty bad. Or if you have a crush on Tortimer, that's pretty bad.
Okay, to be fair,
there's worse. There's nothing.
This is not my crush, chat, but.
Uh-oh. He said, theoretically, what if Isabel...
Technically, Isabel is, but people, I know people crush over Isabel. Okay, I gotta, no.
Literally, I have an Isabel plush. I don't have a crush on her, but I think she's cool.
I mean, people like dogs like that. I won't judge.
What?
Hear me out,
Every
chat.
guy in the game. I love Isabel. She's cute.
But you don't love her like that.
Yeah, exactly.
I think you love her like that, guys.
No, I don't.
Oh, you're good.
You had a Tom Nook dark day? I could write this like scenario in my mind, Taters, where he's like, "There's you owe me 10,000 bells, but you don't have any money." He's like,
"You know what?
Is there any other?" Yeah, he's like, "Is there any other way you can pay off your house?"
I know exactly what scenario that is.
So I get that, Taters. There's like a scenario. There's like a story to be written there.
AI
He's
dungeon.
like, how bad you want to pay off your house to the young lady?
We should do another collab with Taters with us.
And then Timmy and Tommy hold the camera.
Say cheese.
I get it.
Yeah. Now,
I don't know who the hell Rodney even is.
You know who else had a writing?
Wait, reading your minds.
Oh no. However, most Taters.
Wait, what do you mean by that? You have to elaborate before you go to bed. You're not allowed to go to bed until you elaborate. What do you mean, everybody?
What do you mean elaborate? Oh boy. Oh no.
Yeah, I think. Hey, listen, guys, owning Animal Crossing plushies is cool. Like, Animal Crossing is a popular series. Oh, Sasha. I see. Yeah. You see, that's what you're talking about. I get you. Yeah, listen. Like I said, all jokes aside, there's definitely worse characters than Sasha. I'm not going to judge you for that.
Wait, are
like
you...
I said, Tortimer's pretty bad.
Are you in this level?
Tom Nook's pretty bad for a dark day.
Oh, you're in this level as well. That's cool.
Tortimer is the turtle that's like 80 years old.
Yeah, he's the guy that's not dead yet. Oh.
There was the Tom Nooks that are. See, I knew it, Taters. I knew it. I could see the appeal. Like, not for myself, but I have empathy enough to understand exactly where the human brain would go.
Oh, hi,
Oh,
Zach.
shit, we have a bubble. Oh, I was trying to fucking wall kick.
Wait, you're dead?
Yeah. Ooh. I'm not dead. I just fucking fell down. It's so hard to wall kick off this. Fuck! I forgot, Taters. There was a scenario just like that with me and a different character, but I can't remember now.
Like an animal?
No! It was the Tom Nook scenario, but it was not Tom Nook and... I was Tom Nook and it was another character. I can't remember. Gosh, this is a long time ago. I don't remember right now. If it pops in my head, I'll talk about it in Discord, but I can't remember. But that exact type of thing
Wait,
happened.
did you get that dialogue? But I didn't.
I got it. I just smashed through it.
Yeah, because we're through the...
I was just like spamming the A button. Fuck you, Bowser!
Wait, are we getting the same, like... Is he asleep?
Oh, he's teleporting like Sans!
Do. Stop following me, you idiot!
I'm trying to bait him. He's more concerned with you than me. He doesn't care about me.
Oh, no you don't.
God, I baited your ass. That was great. That was a perfect bait
You
moment.
son of a...
Woohoo! So long, Bowser. Give me the key. Hurry up.
No, I'm gonna save your key.
It's Red Luigi. Oh!
Stop! How am I gonna get out of here? I'm stuck in this level now. What the fuck?
Are you really? They actually
Like,
stuck you in the level?
I can just manually leave, I guess, but like, that's sad.
That is kind of sad. You just get like left behind.
What is this, the Rapture?
Literally.
Don't clip out of context, chat. I don't want Jesus to be seeing this. I had played through chapters 3 and 4. I only streamed 3, part of 3.
I'm
but-
still waiting to
Yeah, don't
buy that game.
I would
I'd like to.
I would say try not to spoil it for Zach, or keep it very vague so he will get mad at you, but not ban you.
Yeah, right. I don't know nothing really about it.
Yeah, I know a lot of us have played it, but like, I loved it.
Alright.
Whoa. What Dry World at night looks cool.
I have a little horror story I want to share.
Horror story?
Yeah.
Sans gets AIDS and HIV.
I mean, it's not much worse than Peter's fantasy scenario.
Hey, you leave.
Yeah, I'll leave.
I had
Peter's,
something. I had something very, very similar, but I just can't remember what the fuck the character was. Oh gosh, it's gonna drive me nuts. But yeah, continue with your horror story.
So, I came across fan fiction, let's just say, on Wattpad one day. And there's a lot of smut on there. If you aren't aware what smut is, it's pretty much all the, you know, NSW, FW stuff.
Wait, on where? Where did you?
Wattpad.
Where was it? Oh, okay.
Because I do admit a lot. I do read Wattpad a lot. And
Gotcha.
But you know, I don't read smut, and I don't care about smut. You know, it's like you know what you're expecting. But I came across this one thing, unrelated to Undertale, because I usually read Undertale stuff. Sucks to be me, I know. No, I found across a Reader X Splatoon fanfiction that got very messed up very quickly.
No.
So it actually kind of was wholesome at first, because it was about this person that, you know, survived the apocalypse.
Okay.
And then he woke up, got used to it, and then he started, you know, and then it pretty much became like a standard isekai plot where he got overpowered, right?
Yeah.
But
Solo level.
yeah, pretty, but a little better than solo leveling. That matters.
Yeah, I hope so.
In the that's fan fiction. That's all. No, but harem stuff happens.
Yeah.
But then he kills everyone.
Oh my gosh, dude. What is
And then he
Shadow the Hedgehog?
like he fucks them and then
fanfiction?
he kills them.
Oh my gosh, dude. That literally is like some edgelord ass.
That's
story.
the sad part, is because it doesn't come up for like that for like the first like I think 10 chapters, and then as soon as like, oh, it's over. Oh, yeah, it's actually over. It's over.
I remembered my character. I remembered I was thinking about it. I just unlocked it. So the story actually gets worse. This was a long time, not a long time, like around February, I guess. So however many months ago that was, 5 months ago. It was a character. It was like an AI character chatbot, and it was Power from Chainsaw Man.
Oh god.
And it was just like, how bad do you want to get hired on to the bureau? Because like in the anime, she gets hired and she wants to be like a devil hunter.
Oh boy.
So like the scenario was like, the scenario was like, I'll do anything to be a demon hunter. And
Anything
I was like,
you say.
I was like, yeah,
Anything.
that's exactly. So the scenario was like, all right, well let's see if you get hired or not.
Let's see if you'll
That's
do
exactly
some
what it was.
things with your clothes with that.
I remember it now. That's exactly.
I know. I know exactly what you did. That's the sad part. I know exactly how that goes. I don't know how. I don't know if that's. I don't know if I should be disappointed.
I erased the history after that one.
Good for you. That's the sad part, is I know how bad that kind of stuff can get, and I enable it, and I enable that.
It's fun.
I mean, at least if I do that, I should make like, if someone makes a fan fiction, I respect it that you at least explain how you get to that point, like actually make it like a story with like plot progression and character development. Because
Pop made a fan fiction that sucked so bad that I banned it.
well, if you, I mean, I respect them. At least you read it.
Yeah, it was a fan fiction of me, Andrew, and Geralt from The Witcher.
Oh, that actually is
And
pretty.
I was like,
okay.
I'm not reading that bullshit.
Okay, I wouldn't want you to read it on stream at all.
You wanted me to read it on stream. I was like, why would I do that?
Okay.
I was like, I'm not reading.
I know this. I've seen this was like years ago, like 2016, wasn't it?
Yeah,
like,
Vincent remember. He posted it in Discord too.
Was
And I
it-
banned it in Discord.
Was it 2016? Like, because it was How long ago was this? Like, how?
Oh, probably 3 years ago, 4 years ago.
Okay, yeah, this is like, it's a different time. Because if I did it, or Parksy didn't know, you know what I would tell him? Media request himself reading it, so you just hear it. Just have him read it.
Yeah, for sure.
Or if I did it, like the thing is, I respect stuff like that, or like even like bad like animations, or like if you're passionate about it, go
For sure.
Because there's a lot of undersell stuff like that, and people hate on it. People might not get it or care.
I mean, there's some that are so bad it does make me laugh, but I mean, I'm still glad that they made it because it made me laugh, even if that was not their intended goal. I'm still glad
They
it
might be
exists.
upset, but on the big thing I like to think is it takes a lot of courage even to make it. Like a lot of people aren't going to even write it, which is like fucked up. Because you might have a crush over something, and that might be fucked up. But
yeah, for sure.
if someone likes a good story,
Wait, Dally, did I not do a Discord notification? I did, didn't I?
You did. You got the live note.
Yeah, Dally's lying to me, bro. This guy over here, we got fucking CNN in the chat right now, just fucking
Like,
shit.
I'm gonna be honest. If I ever did something like quote unquote fan fiction or like isekai stuff.
Chat, how much money to make a Milky Finisher fan fiction? I'll make it right now. Not right now, but I'll make it.
How much for me and Zach to do it?
Yeah, we'll do a collaboration.
AI Dungeon Part 2.
Yeah, I'll write the story. It'll be a short one. I don't feel like wasting my time.
Yeah, well, that's my point though. Is like if I ever did like a thing like that, I would go all the way.
I'll read it on stream too. Obviously, there wouldn't be any fun.
Yeah. Well,
you give me double the money not to do it. All right, so $10, or else I'm making it right now. It was $5 to do it, $10 to not do it.
No, $10 to both of us. Sorry, I gotta double
really
it.
a Jack and Daxter game in 2024? I don't believe you. don't know why I don't believe that at all.
Kind of my point is though, it's like I was kind of joking about it with the finger up thing, but if I did do something like fan fiction or just like in general, I would go all the way. I would make it a game or like I would make it not just something you'd read.
Yeah, visual novel experience.
That's kind of my point though. Is like if you're making something like that, you gotta know your audience. Which is if there's no audience and you're making it for yourself, you're the audience.
No audience.
If you're making it
No
for yourself,
audience.
well, that's my point. If you want to write something, you gotta enjoy it yourself. People are gonna write stuff that just makes no sense. If you're,
Yeah, of course.
that's kind of what I'm saying. I wonder how many of these like Wattpad's mutts are lemons.
If I didn't like my own story and lore, I wouldn't have made like 2 hours worth of.
That's my point.
tournament
In a
movies.
way, you're writing your own fan fiction. That's for
It
yourself.
really is, yeah. That's what the movie is.
And that's what I'm
the
saying.
The Ouija Invitational is pretty much just fan
And people
fiction.
think
It's just real shit. It's
and
real. It's
and
not
let's be
fan
honest, there is people out there that don't like it, and there's gonna be.
I don't give a fuck. Fuck
That's
those
kind of
people.
my point is, but you love it. A lot of
You
people
guys
here
want to
love
come to
it.
my house and fight me? I'll kill you in real
Yeah,
life.
you gotta know your audience, and if your audience is yourself, you gotta make sure you enjoy it more for everyone than everyone else. You gotta brag about it. You gotta like it.
My audience is Wiggler.
No,
Regular Wednesday.
no, it isn't. No. No, I'm gonna stop you right there, bud. But yeah, that's kind of what I'm saying. Is if I made something like that, I would make it myself.
Daddy, I would never call you a Wiggler. I'd call you a Wiggler.
Why do I
Never-
why do I hear
never
the
wiggle.
why do I hear the music? The boss music. What the
Yeah,
fuck? It's not a chromosome out. You're not gonna make me a girlfriend, so I'm sorry about that, bud. I know what you're implying. I'm sorry. Trust me. Trust me. Trust me. If you want someone as a girl, you probably want to do Andrew, not me.
Yeah,
I hope Andrew's not watching this shit.
he's dead. He's dead.
He died.
And Andrew said, "Nothing, you idiots. Andrew's dead. He's locked in my basement." Ha.
You know, I like that headcanon that he comes back to life like once every year for like the Game Awards. But I also think it's equally as funny if he just hired an impersonator every year instead.
That would cost way more money than having the actual.
That's kind of
I
or
agree with
or
that.
like or you just have him record his lines in the van, so it's pre-recorded and it's just like a PNG of him.
What I should do is just trick him next time I talk to him. Trick him and then just record his voice and
Yeah.
upload it to an AI generator, and then I just have unlimited AI Andrew.
And so there was like a long time where me and someone else had like an AI intern. That's the lore guys on my channel, right?
Hell yeah.
But it was my voice. But there was a channel point reward for that, and that was fun.
Hell yeah.
But the issue
I use the Sonic one in your channel.
Sonic Punch.
The Sonic text-to-speech or whatever.
Yeah. But sorry, I'm blanking out here. I think I am, but I'm sure what's going on at this point. You know
Rainbow Cabbage just Rainbow Cabbage just beat up a pregnant woman in a chat.
No, I didn't. What are you talking about?
You can kill, dude.
Dude, stop punching a woman. Stop punching those innocent enemies that I don't know the names of.
I would hire Sonic to punch a pregnant woman.
One Sonic, one punch Sonic.
Yeah, well, he's doing like 3 punches, like a 1, 2, 3 combo.
1, 2, 3. One punch man. Wait,
Hell yeah.
Okay, I have a confession, Zach. I never watched One Punch Man.
I like it. It was one
Uh,
of my favorites years ago. I remember that was like Epic Man's favorite.
I never. Okay, so I think it's partly related because I never watched it and I was considering maybe watching it. But then I watched Solo Leveling and then I just kind of.
It is not. It is 1,000,000 times better than
Yeah,
Solo Leveling.
that's kind of what I'm saying. It's
Like, the whole
my
world
mind.
makes fun of shows like Solo Leveling.
Like I think I like
very
it, but I used to kind of have the same hesitations like as My Hero Academia.
I fucking love My Hero Academia.
No, I don't think it's bad. I just don't think
It's
they're.
got-
I don't think they're kind of my kind of anime. That's what I'm concerned
I get
about.
I love it.
Because I like more like
Well,
comedies, and I don't think those are
I get
comedies.
it. That's fair.
I don't know. It's Solo Leveling feels like a comedy that is that is trying hard. Is that
One Punch Man is definitely a comedy. It's like it is not a very serious show.
I don't know. It just feels like it does feel cheap, even though it's like I don't know. One day I'll watch it, but I don't know. It's like wait, time. Like
Cleaning guy with the cape? What are you talking about?
like
Tweaker?
how would I have caused 9/11 if I was -2 days old? I wasn't born yet.
Yeah, he wasn't even born when it happened.
I was in someone's womb. How do you think?
But I
that?
was, so that means I did it.
He did it with whoever with my mother. Okay.
With Keezy.
Keezy, what's Keezy doing?
Dope Greg, what's going on, Dope Greg?
Didn't Keezy die with Andrew?
Yeah, he blew up. Andrew was in the Middle East, and Keezy had a bomb strapped to his chest and exploded him.
Wait, you're saying Keezy is a terrorist?
He said he was. This is not my word. What do you mean this game looks like shit? This game looks cool, dude. What are you talking?
Yeah, this is gonna be Mario in 2014.
Zack boy, he plays with the Zack toy.
I do not want to play with you down there, okay?
Oh, Jack and Daxter looks like shit. Okay.
Not gonna lie, I'm not surprised at all by that. Like, I didn't even know there was a new game, but honestly, if it's anything like what I think it is.
Is it a phone game?
Is it like a cookie clicker one?
Cookie clicker? I just shit my pants! Why did you say that in the chat, bro? You can talk to your mom about changing your diaper. Don't talk to me. I've never changed a diaper in my life, and if my life goes the way that I want it to, I never will.
No, it's not. Zach, you just reminded me of that one clip where the guy was playing Grand Theft Auto. Was in that the game, and his mother kept change yourself. You shit yourself, Mom. No.
Oh,
no.
the mafia?
Yeah, the mafia.
Yeah, Mom, not yet. No, yeah, Mom, not yet.
That sounds like a clip out of South Park.
To be fair, he never said no. He just said not yet.
Give me
He
like
was
five.
gonna change
Give
his
me like
pants,
5
just
minutes.
not yet.
Like he's like
It's like,
sleeping.
come on,
with it.
Mom, hop off his dick, bro. He's playing Mafia 3.
That 11
He never
finished
said no.
level. Yeah. It's like a white
He's like,
lie.
let me finish. Change my diaper.
Let me finish it, then I'll do it. And he never does.
He never does, dude.
So it's pretty much what I know. Well, guys, you know it's a good stream, and I'm literally losing my mind.
It's 480p on the PS4. That sounds horrible.
I don't think that should be allowed.
That should be illegal.
Like, does it at least run at 60, or is it gonna be like 30?
Yeah, link it in Discord. I want to see it. I don't know. Is this real? Just like a guy made this in like
Okay.
Flash or something.
Okay, there is like one very, very unlikely scenario. I think that actually would be really cool and funny. But I cannot see a Jackson Dexter game actually intentionally going for that. Or any game.
Yeah.
If there was a game that literally like was trying to like one-to-one accurately recreate like a game from like the original era, like a PlayStation 1 game that actually ran out, like emulated, right? But it's not actually emulated.
Yeah.
Like like LSD Simulator kind of was.
Yeah.
But I cannot see a high-budget company thinking that would be a smart idea, even if it is like just because I think they would think it would be stupid.
Yeah.
But I also think that would be like a really cool idea. So when we made like a game or like a recreated a game, but like intentionally made it like a shit, like an accurate like PS1 game. Or
Nope, Greg. What the hell is Barnyard? Is that Back at the Barnyard? Is that what you're talking about?
yeah, the Nickelodeon show.
Back at the Barnyard for GameCube?
It was a Wii game too, I think.
Oh, okay.
But that game I loved as a kid.
It was good. I never even heard of it. I didn't even know there was a Back at the Barnyard game. That's news to me.
For a licensed game during that era, it was really good.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking to a guy who GameCube, the Lord of the Rings movies were some of my favorite Lord of the Rings games.
I don't know.
Those were
That and the Scooby-Doo games, I think, from the era are like
I never
the
played
best.
the Scooby-Doo one.
Yeah. Well, there's a couple of Scooby-Doo games from that era.
Yeah. I'm just happy that Pac-Man World 2 is getting a remake. That's one of my favorite.
I keep reading that game even exists. I keep reading that
It's so good.
like a sequel. I know I probably played it. That's the sad part. But like,
I've never played the first one because the first one wasn't on GameCube. The first one was only on I think PlayStation.
is there 3 games? Is there 3 in that trilogy? Is there a trilogy?
There are. Yep. Pac-Man World 1, 2, and 3. Yep.
I think I played the 3rd one, but I never read the first 2, which is sad.
Everybody says the third one's the worst one. So
That's the sad part. Is I know I played one of them on PS1, which might have been the first one.
everybody says 2 is the best, 1 is the second best, and then 3 is the worst.
I played whatever was on the PS1 because I had a PS1 a long time ago.
Oh, well, if you played the PS1, that's Pac-Man World 1.
Yeah.
I never played, but I want to get the Pac-Man World Repack,
Yeah.
the remake one.
And
it's on Switch, but I'm waiting for it to be on sale. I don't want to spend the full price on it. But if it's on sale, I want to get it.
And then I had a PS2 at some point, but then I got rid of it. This was like when I was like 3 or 4. I never had a PS3.
I did, but I bought it like a year before the PS4 came out.
Yeah,
like
that's what I'm saying. Is I got a PS4, but then I got a PS5. But besides that, I recently rebought a PS2 mainly for the Persona games.
Really?
Yeah.
Luckily for me, all the Persona games that I care about playing are on Switch or PlayStation.
Well, yeah, you have the remakes, but like.
Persona 4 Golden. I guess if you want to count that a remake.
I mean, technically that's like a technical port, technically, right?
Yeah. But Persona 3 Portable is on Switch as well. That was a PSP one.
Yeah. No,
I play as the girl character.
Yeah. I personally just have a fascinating vision with like the PS2 and like N64 kind of graphics.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I'm like that for N64, but I'm not super interested in old PlayStation 1 games besides maybe like Metal Gear Solid or Silent Hill.
I'm not big into PS1 graphics.
You said PS4?
No, PS1.
Oh yeah, same. I like N64 though. So like when indie games come out and they look like N64 games, I like that aesthetic a lot.
Technically though, if you think about it, PS1 games are just it's the same as the other games, right? N64, except I think they're not blurry. That's pretty much the main difference.
There is a big difference. I watched a video about how they're different, even though if they're like similar in power, like the way that they process graphics. Like PlayStation, like N64 games use a lot of fog. Like a lot of the games have like fog.
Yeah.
Yeah. And PlayStation 1 games, like the textures kind of like shake or they look shimmery.
Yeah.
And N64 really didn't have that. That was like a PS1 thing where like the textures looked like shaky.
I think it's because there's no C axis on the PS1.
Yeah, something like that.
Buffer.
That would make sense. Yeah, there was some explanation that I can't fully remember.
But yeah, no, I guess I don't want to recreate the N64 like, technically speaking, right? Cause
yeah, just like the visuals, not like the power. Yeah.
And the look and the presentation, more importantly. Like, I want to make it a game that, like, you would play like in the if you're playing on an N64 or like got ported like this.
Yeah.
Like it looks like an N64 that could have released.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of what the big thing is. I want to make an RPG like that.
Welcome back, Vincent. What was the ad for? What ad did you get?
And in theory, I could have just made Mario 64 that. I could.
Yeah.
But I don't know. One day I'm gonna make something like that. But if I make it, it's gonna be for myself, kind of really. That's the big thing.
That's fair.
I don't know, I'm not trying to, go on ramble.
I gotta try to get the metal cap.
I honestly think you might have won. Because by now I'm kind of lost. Like, I don't know what stars I need, what stars I don't need. I'm waiting for that. I'm waiting for the upstairs to be unlocked.
I gotta hotline. If you call that, you should be arrested immediately.
I kind of should. I should be OJ, but I'm scared. I'm scared to be OJ right now. I don't even know. I forgot how to be OJ in this on here.
I could do it on the endless staircase. It's so much harder to do in the.
I know it's possible.
It is. I've done it before. It is just a lot.
Because that's kind of like the only way I could get more stars if I can do that, I think. But I'm not used to doing it on this controller. Honestly, I think I only know how to do it on actual N64 controllers.
I'm gonna get one more star and then I'll try it.
Yeah. Actually, we've been live for 2 hours. I don't know how long that we actually been,
That is true, yeah. Well, the first hour almost was all tech problem.
Yeah. Okay, I've been live for an hour and a half. You've been live for 2.5.
True, yeah, because a lot of me was like starting soon screen and then talking about bullshit.
Yeah.
Every time I go live, it's always at least minimum 30 minutes of talking. That's like every stream.
I really do like the small things they did, like the mirror by the tiny huge, but you know, in the second floor where there's the mirror.
Yeah, yeah.
Small things like that doesn't look impressive, but it's like a charm to it. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, you know, it would have been amazing back in the day.
Well, yeah, I was alive, so it was. I was 4 years old, and I was like, this.
Yeah,
this
and I was negative like 6.
Negative 10.
No, I'm not that young, dude.
No, not that much.
Dude,
Metal Mario looks cool.
Technically, I'm old still, and that hurts because you're like older than me, and I'm old.
I'm not considering you old.
I'm almost 24. A lot of people that I hang out with are like 14. Don't think that
Anybody younger than 35 is young. If you're 35 or older, then you're old.
Thank you.
I think that's.
I appreciate your sentiment, but like.
That's what I think. 35 is when people start being like, my back, my neck.
My muscles.
Like Vincent and Pop. Pop's like 47, dude. His life is over.
Isn't Epic Man older?
Epic Man is not. Epic Man is younger than both of us.
Wait, what?
Yes, Epic Man is way younger than both of us, but he looks like a 50-year-old man.
Damn, yeah.
He looks like Bob Burgers.
He literally does.
He looks like he's been divorced already. I'm pretty sure Epic Man's 21.
Bro, barely could drink. Wait, he's Canadian, so maybe he could drink.
Wahoo!
I do want to ask, is that, so I was watching the clips from the Epic Man, you know, the podcast, right, with Epic Man?
Yes.
Is your Squid Game thumbnail AI? Or Epic Man,
So what I did was there
there's
is
more
a program I have on my computer, and if I did it on a Sunday stream a long time, it's called FaceGen.
Oh, I think you did segment it, didn't you? Yeah.
Yeah, do you remember where I used my face and then we also
I think
and it puts it on a 3D model?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I took a screenshot of the podcast and cropped it to where it was just Epic Man's face, and then I used the FaceGen program, and then in GIMP I just like used the airbrush to mask it onto Ji-Hoon's face instead.
Okay, so there's no actual AI. It was just literally just.
Well, technically, FaceGen does use a little bit of AI to like rip the image onto a 3D model.
Okay, I was more or less curious if it was like, because you're using it as a tool there, and then
Yeah, I mean, it still took me like 20-30 minutes to make that thumbnail. It wasn't like I just put it into like a filter or something.
Because at first, I thought what you generally did was you put it in like something like Stable Diffusion, and you literally put Epic Man's face and say, Epic Man, please.
No, that would be crazy if that knew who he was. That's why I couldn't do something like that.
Well, you could probably throw his face in there and then as a reference, but it would be longer.
Yeah, but I wanted it to like look kind of like real, so I just did it myself.
I think that's better up first.
I think it turned out really good. Yeah, so
yeah,
I
like to see. That's why I was wondering. Because I know sometimes you do AI, but it's like not a bad one.
Yeah. For some of my YouTube thumbnails, like the ones where I'm like animated or whatever.
Yeah.
Or like like for Mario Gore mode, I did a bloody Mario. So like, yeah. There ain't no way I'm gonna be able to do this BLJ, dude.
At night.
This one's way too early.
Don't BLJ up the stairs at 3 a.m.
At 3 a.m. Yeah. Well, it's only 9 p.m. right now, so.
Okay, good
Time.
night. Nah. It's almost 10. Time goes so quick now. Ow.
Screw it, I'm just gonna give up.
Alright. I don't know how we want to check this. Or how long we want to keep going.
Where's the menu?
This is Mario's voice on iToad. Oh my god, that's cursed.
Wait, what?
Where are you? Downstairs?
Oh, I was in Jolly Roger Bay. I mean, I'm still in there. And of course I'm there at night where it's like the darkest, scariest level in the whole game.
Okay, I'm gonna join you.
I
Okay,
couldn't get one of the stars because I didn't have metal cap, but now I have metal.
Okay, Loki, I think this is actually just higher pitch Mario on a Toad.
Mario with higher pitched vocals.
Yeah.
Red or Metal Mario's red in this for some reason, but it looks really cool.
Yeah, it might be just some miscellaneous things. Meadow Toad.
Hurry up, Mario! You're gonna run out of power. Son of a bitch! I ran out of metal cap before I got the star. That is not pink. You must be colorblind, buddy. That is crimson red.
That is salmon red.
Yeah.
Actually. It's not
See
pink,
that pink
though.
bomb? That's pink right there. Pink bomb is bright as
What is this? Pink, metal,
Purple Peach.
pink, yeah,
The worst character in the fucking ever made.
according to Nathaniel Bandy.
Well, it's just like there's so many Mario characters you could have added. They did not need.
How are
Like,
you?
that is not.
I forgot how you're supposed to turn this off.
Wait, turn what off?
That star.
Oh, you just get it with the metal cap, which I just did right now.
Damn it.
You got
Dang it.
auto mod. What'd you do? The hell did you do
Yeah,
wrong?
what do you do? I didn't say anything. Hold on, I'll check. I'm gonna drown. I'm gonna drown! Thank God I didn't drown. Let me check. I called you a dingleberry.
That's enough to get auto modded. Holy shit!
He says bully. They think dingleberry is a bully.
There's a bullying term. They need to watch that anime that I watched where they actually got bullied.
It's literally that. Literally is like a like one of those like what is it? The incentives that the terms I use like shows that pretty much mean like bad words, but they're not.
Yeah, it's like a fake censored
Yeah.
bad word.
Literally, that's what they think it is. It's a fake bullying term.
People are soft.
People are.
Ice cream is softer.
You like soft? I like.
Mamma mia!
I like both. I like soft serve. I like hard scoop.
You like
I like
hard?
snow-
You like hard things? Oh.
Ice cream. Yes, I like all kinds of ice cream.
Even those kind of ice creams?
Proudly. Proudly.
Guys, I don't think he knows what ice cream we're talking about.
I try not to eat it too much because it's got so much damn sugar in it, but I do love it.
Okay, I need your thought. Do you like custard?
Oh yeah, I love it.
I only had custard, I think, once.
Do you have any like Culver's where you live? Culver's is
Oh,
good.
yeah, I love Culver's. There's one in the
Yeah,
town.
Culver's is good. They got good frozen custard.
I barely have had their custard, though, but
It's good. They used to, I don't know if they still do, but they used to do a different flavor every day.
I know they still do the kids thing where if you have a kid there, you get like a free custard.
Okay.
Because my niece and I went there one time recently.
America's the only place where somebody dies from eating too much.
I mean, they got a point in that, yeah. Actually, I'm actually on bait stop. no, I don't know how many Culvers are around you, Zach. But if you know, yeah, are they far apart or are they close? You don't have to say.
I've got one. No, I've got one. I would say about 20 minutes from me.
Okay, because that's the thing. Because I know it's pretty hard to find outside my state.
Yeah, it's not as close as like something like Taco Bell or
Oh,
McDonald's.
of course, but like,
Yeah.
I know they're the most frequent in Wisconsin because that's like the thing that no,
Yep.
like,
Yeah.
like cheese curds, right?
Home of the custard.
Yeah, and cheese curds and stuff.
I love cheese curds from Wisconsin. Holy.
I love cheese curds.
Yeah, when I went to Wisconsin Dells, I had the best cheese curds of my life. It was like eating liquid gold.
Literally. But no, I had but yeah, usually get one of those like burgers.
Oh yeah, Culver's burgers are great.
Yeah, and then we used to do it when we go eat. There's one really close to us that's elite. So, but there used to be more around, like farther away. But
Okay.
we sometimes go eat lunch around. But their root beer I love the root beer.
Dude, yeah, I forgot. Yeah, yeah.
They have their own root beer.
I
Yeah.
forgot that their root beer is so awesome. Yeah,
They got their
you're
own.
right.
Though. You think it's like AEW, but no, it's their own.
Yeah, it tastes like it's got like vanilla in it or something. It's so good.
Dude, literally, we should. I'm telling you, we need to do a podcast, just a meet up one time, like in real life. And just,
Podcast at Culver's.
dude, I'm just saying, like we have the choice. I know you're not that too far. You're like, I know it's a couple hours, but like, dude, it's possible.
Nothing like a Culver's podcast.
Or like,
just do it in the
or
Culver's
like,
booth.
or we need to find some convention to go together or something, and then
Yeah, I'll just bring my laptop and my microphone.
Okay, real question: have you ever had Portillo's?
Yes, actually.
I love Portillo's. Like I will die in a field depending for it.
My uncle took me there when I like was around him to visit, and damn, like they had some good hot dogs and all.
Their croissant Italian beefs are like what I usually get.
And they had like some chocolate cake shake, and it was like crazy delicious.
I haven't had that yet, but I do want to get that one day.
Yeah.
But I usually get the same thing, but because it's always so fresh. But
yeah.
Just running literal.
Yeah, that's like a place people will drive like hours to go see. I've heard.
There's not that many around in the
world, yeah.
And they're all in the same state,
I've
which
only
is
ever
really
been to
funny.
one in my life.
They're usually only in the same state, like in my state. I think is the funny part.
Yeah.
If you know, you know, and you don't dox me because of that. Not like, dude, like.
Do you have any Jack in the Box where you live?
I think there's very little. It's like as many as Long John Silver's.
Dude, fuck Long John Silver's.
Okay.
I hate that. That place makes me
up.
like every time. Well, I haven't eaten there in like 15 years, but when I did, I would always get sick every time.
Okay, I
Like,
have a
make me sick
story.
every time.
I need to share you the story while I'm trying to.
Oh no.
Because there is like still like one, and I don't think it's even like I think they're bankrupt. That's the funny part. But like,
good. You deserve to be bankrupt. I hate that.
But like I've seen a couple, and like there's not many. It's like you think they're like non-existent at this point, but they're. I passed by one, and my mother said, "There's nothing around. Maybe we could eat there." And I tell them, "No." Just outright no, because I remind them every time we went there when I was like younger, like this was like when I was like a baby, right? 5 or 6, I think was the last time. But or my grandmother, because that's like the only times we ever went, was one of those two. Okay. One of them always got sick, and I always know some kind of stupid horror story happened in terms of one of us got sick, or someone got hurt.
Yeah. Damn, dude, that place is cursed.
And I don't know. It's just the food wasn't even that good.
No. There's a lot of fast food I would eat, but not fast food fish. Yeah. That's not. Sorry. Fish is something that they should cook very slowly and carefully. They shouldn't put in the deep fryer.
I don't know if you'll be surprised, but I never had sushi in my life.
I love it, man. It's not for everybody.
No, me and my sister, my older one, because they're both older. Let me put the one that lives, that's more close to me. We've never had it, but my mother absolutely doesn't want us to have it. But she's the only one that knows where we can get it. We don't want to get, we want to go to one of those bars,
Yeah, you want to go to a nice place, not like a gas station or something,
so
and then you get sick.
We low-key have been trying to gaslight her into doing it for one of her birthdays.
That's funny.
I think it's a funny story because I don't know, she likes cod, but I think she really believes that it's only you can go. I butchered that. Holy crap! No, I think she believes you only can get that there and nothing else. Like you can't get burgers or anything else, but you can. Mm-hmm. But I think that's the funny shit because like if someone just goes to this place just for this one food, I feel bad for them.
Yeah. Mamma mia!
No, it's not Jack Box. It's Jack in the Box. No, I'm not jacking in a box. Sorry, chat.
Yeah, I've never had it, but I was just thinking of.
I have had Jack in the Box, I think, once, but not in this state.
Gotcha.
Because there's I think a fair amount. No.
Yeah, there's like a bunch where I live, but I just don't really go there very often.
It's kind of like Hardee's.
There was a Hardee's where I live, but it closed down.
Well, I
So
think
now there's none
I
by
think
me.
it technically. Well, I think what it was originally two different things. I think like Carl Jr.
Yeah.
It's the same
Jr.
thing, but like you know, but yeah.
Vincent, why the hell would I ever pay you money to do that?
I don't think we want to.
Never
I
in
think
my life
I'll
would I
pay
ever-
you $200. I guess you saw. Remember the post I put about 1,000 subs,
Yeah, the $1,000 subs or whatever.
200 subs. I'll pay for that for you not jacking that box.
Yeah, I would never give you money to do that.
'Cause
I know you would actually do it.
We
Why
would. I
why the
would
hell-
do it, but that's fucked up though. You know, I wouldn't.
$1,000 that's better, way more beneficial to my life than you doing that.
Vincent, I'll let you do it for like. I'm not gonna say because he might actually do it.
He said he'll do it for free.
No, I'll do it. If you pay $1,000 for that many subs, I'll let you do it. Doesn't mean I'm gonna show.
$1,000,
Yeah, I'm not.
but
Doesn't mean
not for him to do it.
But no, I'll let him do it, but he can't show his bucks, so no one will know what he's actually doing.
Yeah, he has to do it at the Jack in the Box drive-thru and then return it.
No, I'll record a video of him doing it there, and then I just, and then I'll put it like under an anonymous account. No, I'll post it on like anime. Guys, it's an anime we're talking about.
Yeah.
I think that would be the most fucked up thing that I could ever say with you.
Is this where's the start?
Yeah, I better do it in the manager's office. Okay, that's on.
Okay, it's even worse.
Why you want me to you want someone to boss you around? Oh, like Tom Nook scenario.
Yeah, I'm the opposite. I fucking hate when people boss me around. I was like, it makes me so like it makes me not, even if it's something that I want to do. If somebody tells me to do it, it makes me not want to do it.
Yeah, I don't
anymore.
like that either. Because it kind of defeats the purpose in my opinion.
I'm petty, dude.
I mean, and that's not even like a thing with my type. I have a type, but like
But Jack in the Box.
no,
The guy, the mascot.
no.
The big clown?
I feel bad for him
Why?
because he had people jacking his box.
That's true. Yeah.
No, and then there's also a way better game series, Shotbox. That's... No,
Toy Chica.
no. No, I have a type.
Play
though.
modded AM64. Dude, I stream so many modded Mario. I can't.
Every
like,
Sunday
hundreds.
stream he does it.
Yeah, and this Sunday's no different. I got even.
No, no,
I got like a Garfield 64 game for Sunday.
I have a type, right? And
Okay.
being bossed around, being controlled is not one of them.
Yeah, same. If someone did that to me, I'd be so pissed off.
Yeah. And I'm not. And you can guess all you want what my type is, but I'm not gonna tell
That's
you.
like the type of shit Wendy would like.
Honestly, I'm not gonna comment on that one. Okay, I'm gonna ask you. I'm not gonna tell you if you're right though. What do you think my type is?
Luigi.
No, I'm not. Okay, so no, I'm not gay. I'll tell you that much. Sorry guys, my name does not mean that. That's a funny story in its own. I know you were gonna say something like that. No.
It's because you picked him to be in the swimsuit contest.
Did I?
Yeah, you won like a contest or a giveaway. And
But you never
the
told me.
prize
I
was-
just okay. To be clarified, to be.
The prize was you got to pick a character to be in the swimsuit contest.
I don't think you ever told me it was a swimsuit contest. That's the funny part. I don't think you ever clarified.
I don't think so either.
I think you told me it was. I think you told me it was for. It was
Milk
for.
caliber or something?
It was milk caliber, but you never said specifically.
Probably.
Okay.
That sounds about
Okay.
right.
Yeah, I'm straight. Okay. At least he. Okay. Yeah.
Woohoo! I just got flipped.
I mean, I'm not a furry, but
But yeah, that's even worse.
that's no. No, I would type. That's all I'm gonna say. I mean, I'm kind of just
Oh, no.
forcing myself into a grave at this point by
Is it-
humoring it.
Saga of Tanya the Evil.
No, little girls are not my kind.
But it's actually
mean,
an old man in
Yeah,
your body.
that's even worse. I mean, like, there's okay. Okay. I know this is probably. I know some people might hate me, and some people
Uh-oh.
might, and I know some
You're
people
gonna hate
might
Rainbow
completely get
Cat for
it.
this.
But I don't think the logic behind anime like
Rainbow Kappa says, I hate Chinese women.
if you said you, that's your problem, not me.
I name one Chinese person I like. That's so bad.
Okay, you just like that. Okay, you just like Chinese people. Oh my god.
No, I never said that.
No, no. My point is, if you're like, doing it, I'm not saying I do it. I'm just saying, but like,
Uh-oh.
ages in anime and hentai and stuff are different than doing it to real people.
Well, of course, yeah. They, like, well, some people, their hamster brains can't realize that because they don't understand the difference.
And then
like reality.
there's actual little kids that you're doing it to, and then there's kids that are actually 9,000 years old. So how would you explain that to someone if they're just doing it like?
The best advice is you don't explain it because it's never gonna lead to a good conversation.
And then there's just the child molesters.
Well, yeah, dude. Well, obviously.
And there's just the real deal.
Subway.
Yeah. And there's Epstein.
Yeah, he's like the worst one.
He's the figurehead, yeah.
He's the leader of the bunch. You know him well.
He did it.
He's finally back.
No, he's chunky. He's dead.
He's Donkey Kong.
He's dead. You never seen that video? The
yeah.
Where they're back, but Chunky's dead. It's just him.
Yeah.
That's I hate how I really should know. Whenever we do a collab, like whenever I'm on your stream, it ends up like this. Where like I just talk.
That's not my fault.
No, I know it's not your fault, but I really should not be surprised because like even on the Mario Party streams, this happens.
Yeah. Epstein was never murdered. Yes.
He murdered himself with comment.
I did.
No, I'm not saying that's my political belief, guys. I'm just saying that's my interpretation of the crime.
I believe that Jeffrey Epstein deserves the death penalty.
I just don't deserve he should exist. He's not real.
He's already dead. He can't do nothing more to that.
Guys,
Can't do. What are you gonna resurrect him and kill him again?
Honestly, I don't blame you, Danny, for this. But Zach, would you use the death note on him?
I would never kill anybody, even bad people. But I would encourage others to do so.
So you encourage others. So that's because I know. Okay. So fun fact. Okay. Because isn't your name or your Zach Lolly alias based on that death
note? It's inspired by Death Note.
So let's just say, hypothetically, you found the death note and you had to do it once in order to not die, like as a liability.
There's other people I'd use it on before.
So who would you use on? Who's your top pick?
Probably Windy Atlas.
What? Flip it. Okay, now I guess it's fair for me to say someone, right?
Well, no. Let me think of a real answer.
Not a joke answer. I mean, there's obviously a Ouija you can put it on.
He's immune to it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He's probably if he's like the witch, if he's
right,
like
yeah.
I mean,
there's no heart for can't die of a heart attack.
I'll be honest, I never fully watched Death Note. I only watched like the first season a long time ago, so I don't know the technical stuff about it.
Gotcha.
But in theory, how I interpret it is you can't kill someone else who also has. There's only one Death Note, isn't there? Like only one person.
No. Halfway through the show, a second one appears.
But can the person with the Death Note kill the person with the Death Note, like the other Death Note?
Yeah, it comes down to whoever writes it first.
Okay.
So if
That's what I'm
you
saying.
write it first, you kill the other person. If they write it first,
So Death Note is immune. Okay.
Yeah, but
So,
you have to know their first and last name and spell it right.
So
if you don't, then it doesn't.
So you don't need to dox them. You just need to know their name.
Exactly.
Which is fucked up. Like isn't that like farmer?
Yeah.
Okay, no. For a real answer though, who would you?
Let me think. I'm trying to think of like the worst person.
That's a lie. We gotta make sure they're alive. You can't just say, "Oh, I want to kill Hitler as a baby, please."
Yeah, he's already dead. So let me just think.
We're not counting time travel on this. And I'll be honest, I'll fictional characters as long as they're alive. In terms of yeah. So yeah, if you want to kill Sans, I guess that counts.
No, I would never.
Are you sure?
I never have. I've never beaten Sans in Genocide Route. Only Andrew
You
did.
beat him? You beat him?
Andrew did, not me.
You gotta see what he's making me say.
Let me think.
Holy shit!
Trying
Holy
to
shit!
think.
That hits.
There's gotta be someone like who. I'm just trying to think of like who I hate. There's not many people that I hate, believe it. Or
Which is good. I don't.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Someone
good.
is bad.
There's gotta be someone that like a movie star. I don't know that musician.
Trying to think of who. I'm trying to think of someone that you mentioned on stream that you absolutely hate.
Yeah,
That
me
isn't
too.
I mean, I said fictional people, so you could technically like the Dark Titan,
No, there's like a million.
but like,
Like a million people I hate.
but that's what I'm
Like
saying.
first, I would immediately kill Goku.
The drip, like if like who edits your
And then-
videos?
And then Urban would cry himself to sleep every single night.
Who edits your videos again? I'm trying to remember.
No, I would never want to kill Chris Chan because then there would be no more
No
funny.
more content. No more funny.
Yeah, we need more content. We need more episodes of the show.
Wasn't it Toxic Riot that edits the videos? Their videos nowadays.
Wait, what happened?
Who edits your videos? The highlights.
I'm doing most of them myself now. For a while, Toxic was doing it.
Yeah, that's why I was wondering Toxic. Because if Toxic was editing this, he could have put the Coco trip there.
True.
Like the beep.
Yeah.
I would. I do have experience editing stuff, but I just haven't. I don't know. I'm not gonna. But no. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So it's kind of hard because what I'm thinking are joke answers. I do have a serious one.
You think if I actually had it that there'd be.
I surprisingly do have an answer that isn't political or fictional.
Okay.
But I want you to say it first because I don't want to feel like
I'm
a
thinking-
dumbass
thinking.
after the fact.
Gotta be. Like I said, there's not really Alex he's got some. I really don't know anybody in my real life that I hate so much that I want to kill him with the.
Yeah, I don't want
Death
to
Note.
actually have anyone that you love or love hate
Of course, that'd be stupid.
because they'll be watching this. I think.
Yeah, IRL, like someone, like a celebrity, someone you know from school. There's really no. I don't really.
A game developer.
There's people I don't want to talk to, but I don't want them to die. I'm just trying to think.
Did someone make a really bad game that you want to die?
Maybe.
Is there a chatter here that you hate? I'm fine.
No, dude, I don't want to kill Putin. He's got the wide Putin meme.
Yeah,
That's
and
too
the
funny.
song's pretty good.
Dun, 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 dun.
Dude. When is Luigi Putin? Wide Luigi.
Wide Ouija meme?
Yeah, because there's. I mean, you did hate Stinky. I mean, you didn't make
did.
Hey Stinky, but you pretty much made a
I
high.
popularized it. It was not popular till I uploaded mine, and then
you upload it in high definition.
literally, and it's still the most viewed version.
I wouldn't kill you, Zach, because then I wouldn't have anyone to host chat back with. I mean, Zach. Okay, I'll be honest. There's other people that does it. I mean, yeah.
I would kill. I guess Billie Eilish.
Okay, I'm wondering why.
I hate all of her songs so much.
Okay, there is. Okay, I get that.
I hate all of her her fan base.
Okay,
It's all just like 14-year-old girls that like think that being a big bitch is cool. It's not cool.
There's a worse person than that, in my opinion.
The Billie Eilish.
That I want that I would, but not like
Who, Scatman John?
no. And I know people are gonna hate me for this, but I have a bad reason. I only know one Billie Eilish song, though. I'm biased in that regard.
I know way too many of them.
Taylor
I'm the
Swift.
bad guy. Yeah, that's true. That's true.
I
I
know.
don't really like her.
Well, the deal is, I grew up with everyone around me liking her songs before Swifties
Oh,
were,
shit, yeah,
before
that'll do it.
Swifties were popularized. Because there's kind of we live in the Midwest.
Markiplier's live streaming talking about AI.
Holy shit! Time to watch Markiplier.
Markiplier.
But no, I don't know. I just don't get it. I wouldn't want her dead. Well, if I had the Death Note and I had to use it on someone.
Everybody. I would put Joji in there too, just so Epic Man is said.
Well, that's my point. Is if like it's like the least joking story I could think of. That if I was like, that's kind of my scenario. Is like if you found the Death Note and you found out that the person like L or whoever, whoever Death Note it was, right? It's not just a random Death
Yeah.
Note. Someone, but in order to use it, or keep them alive, or just keep yourself alive. Let's say
I put Tom.
let's say someone else has the other Death Note and they're going to use it on you in 24 hours, unless you used it on someone.
True.
And if you used it on
Hello,
someone,
Markiplier, I love AI.
Hello everybody, my name is Markiplier, and today we're going to play Undertale, where today we're going to find out Torio is really Torio.
Today we're gonna do Undertale AI Rule 34.
Honestly, you'd probably do that. Honestly, hello everybody, my name is Markiplier, and we're going to see if Torio can fuck.
I'm one of the few people that actually likes AI. I just don't like it to replace real jobs.
Oh yeah.
I think it's very fun as a tool, but you should never fire somebody and replace them with AI. I think that should be against the law.
People, I get it. I get their sentiments, but people get upset just by the mention of it. But there's something different from using it as a tool or like resources, because that's kind of what I do with my arrangements. Is that sometimes I, plan it out with like samples of AI or just do it for like because I like the music myself.
People get mad at me that I make those funny AI songs, but I'm like,
yeah, but I never make any money off of that. So in theory, if someone wanted a job from that, you would be making no money from it.
Actually, I lied. There was a guy in chat who gave me $5 to make an AI song about games.
That's my point. You're not asking for like a job. You're not.
No, I know. Yeah. I was like, this is just like I'm just like making jokes, guys. It's like it's not serious.
And I'm making like somewhat serious arrangements, but like I'm still editing them and using as resources. I'm not gonna just put in a thing and submit it.
Yeah, it's just like I use some AI with my YouTube thumbnails because it's like, dude, it's literally just a YouTube thumbnail. It's not like a word.
And there's different from like generating the art itself. Well, also you're using like images from base it off of. You're not just making like the images.
Yeah, like I still put them into GIMP and I video edit like I remove the background.
Ooh, this is scary at night.
I'm not collecting red coins.
This is like ominous.
Start left is red coins.
This actually looks like my house, like what my house looks like at night, like during the winter, like on Christmas.
That dark.
It's like it's like Christmas Eve.
Holy smokes.
Yeah. No, but that's my point. People just say it because you say the word AI or the.
I know, yeah. People just start getting mad already.
But yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is my thoughts are. It's not. I don't want to replace jobs, but also I'm not making any money with this. So it's kind of like.
Yeah, I think it's very fine for a fun tool.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, obviously, you might make ad revenue, but honestly.
Whatever. Yeah. What $1 a month maybe at most.
Yeah, it took me like 10 years to. I'm not doing this for a living.
Yeah, for real.
Well, that's my point. I don't want to use. Well, honestly, if I make AI, I'm not gonna like how it turns out half the time, anyways. So it's like,
of course.
If I make some, I'm gonna make it because I like it. So
yeah. Well, people are just weird and they don't understand things and they get mad about everything.
Well, technically, or actually, if you're talking AI, it's just a random number. So if you're just saying you're using AI right now to use this website.
Random.
Well, that's really it's just AI. People are just it's just upsetting because people actually know it's pretty good now.
Yeah, right. It's just sad, like old people that can't tell the difference and they'll think like this shit's real.
Well, that's
kind of, dude.
There's a thing with that where people can fall for it, but there's also like people like who want to use AI to recreate stuff, but not like full people.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of like what I like doing is like recreating stuff with it, but not like. I want to make sure people don't like mislead it. It's not real.
Yeah.
It's like emulating it. It's like playing like this. No way. Like people have to do a lot of work just to get this playable.
I finally got 50 stars. Now I can BLJ.
BLJ and it's what? You gotta kill someone. I think Christian is sick. Oh wait, you were. Oh, I never actually. I forgot because I wasn't around for it at the end. How well did he do during that one quiz with who was it on that big stream?
Oh, Punkation mod battle. It's up on YouTube if you wanted to watch the full thing. I got second place.
But I was wondering. I wasn't
So.
sure if you got first or second. I know you did really
I got
well.
second.
I think you
Nope,
liked. I think you liked. I think you liked.
I lost.
in that regard.
I lost all my points in the oh, you can't even BLJ. Oh wait, it was.
I don't think we're gonna be.
I lost all my points because I couldn't type fast. I'm not a very fast typer, and that was the last challenge. Was you have to type a bunch of shit really fast.
Like where you
and I was
just typing. I don't think this is gonna matter. But it'd be really funny if you pushed me up here.
Did they disable it?
No, I think it might be me. Honestly.
I didn't.
No, I see you now. I like how
Hell
like how they do it is that they teleport you before you get up there. So I see you.
I'm watching you from the top of the stairs. This is funny watching you be teleported back over and over again.
I can't teleport you. I don't think. Okay,
It's just funny.
I'm screwed. I can't do it on this control.
I'm gonna kill Bowser with lightning.
There's no way I can teleport to you, can I?
I believe. I don't know. I don't think so. I don't know. How did you go into a bubble that one time?
I was in the same level as you.
Oh.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any way.
What's this? The co-op cafe pipe.
What the hell is that?
I don't know. It's a player option. Is this like Minecraft where you can like teleport colors? Oh my god, it has a help command, that's funny.
BLJ. It's in the game. Someone should do a mod of Mario 64 where if you don't get 70 stars and kill Bowser, then the...
Okay, I have an idea. I kind of actually want to see this because I'm kind of surprised. And it probably is like something. Mario 64, boy, has the Majora's Mask countdown.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about.
But instead of like, so you have to collect all. Oh, that is what you did. There's 70 stars. But like.
Yeah, and it's like you have like.
But instead of like
40
lives,
hours.
but like instead of lives, so you get the. You got the time thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like there'd be a catch to it. Like, would it be easier to do, or would it be harder?
Probably harder. I would guess.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
I don't know. Someone probably has done that. I wouldn't be surprised.
All right, Bowser, your time is up.
Your time is now. Your time is out. I don't think I can really do much. How many stars do you have, anyways? I know you probably have like most of them.
I feel like 35.
Yeah. I mean, I don't really know how you can check. I know there's like per level we can see it, but like.
Yeah.
I think you won, but yeah. Oh my gosh, nighttime cloud. The rainbow ride.
Wing Mario over the rainbow.
Rainbow ride.
You said at nighttime it looks cool.
Yeah, well, it's like the skies are still like, blue, but the lighting's off.
That's cool.
Yeah. Did you already get these stars? I don't know.
Did I get what?
Did you already get the rainbow ride ones?
No, I didn't. I didn't ever even enter that level. I immediately ran right to Bowser and did the BLJ.
Yeah. To be fair, the day-night mod in here really makes the lighting help. Like, it makes it way better.
I think it was cool.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah. I mean, we didn't plan to have this, but it kind of just happened. Yeah.
Come on, Bowser, you piece of shit.
Come over here.
Oh my gosh.
I know you mentioned it on your stream yesterday, I think. But is there any partner games you're excited for?
Any what games?
Partner from the partner direct.
Oh yeah, I mean, like I said, Pac-Man World 2. That was one of my childhood favorite games on GameCube.
That's a remake, though, right?
It is. That is true.
Okay. I
There
guess.
wasn't
Well,
many.
yeah, there wasn't
Most of the
really new
games.
games.
Like,
Or there's games that already came out, but like are coming to Switch too. Like, I'll be honest, Persona 3 Reload looks really good on Switch too.
True, but
But it was game card.
Exactly.
I don't have a Switch 2 yet, so I really don't know how bad that would be for my own experiences.
yeah, it's just like game key cards suck because what it is it's like the game isn't on the cartridge, so if you're not connected to the can't play it.
Well,
so I think that's
don't they already do
So
that for
I
Switch
would-
1 for some games? Like
no, I don't think so.
They do
Oh,
it.
okay.
Okay, they do it
You're
for
right.
games. They do it for games that are too big, like if they're
It's
on
very
in
rare,
cloud.
though.
Yeah,
It's very rare, but
it's
there are some.
standard.
Switch
It's
ones, yeah.
standardized now on Switch 2.
Yeah. I
which
don't
isn't good.
even own any. Every single one that I have is like on the cartridge.
The issue is
So-
that's kind of what they do with PS5 and Xbox now already. You can play them offline, but the games are online,
Yeah.
or you have
So
you have to make sure you're
So,
online.
I'm gonna play Persona Reload. I'm probably just gonna play on my PlayStation 5, honestly.
Well, yeah, I was mainly gonna PC, but you don't have a PC to do that with.
Yeah.
But I would say, yeah, PS5. I don't know, if you're buying a game that makes it, I don't know how differently it looks graphically. Like, it would probably look best in PS5, right?
What was that? What about
Would
PS5?
it look better in PS5, you think?
Honestly, it probably looks very similar. It's not a super demanding game. I think the Switch 2 version from the trailers looked just as.
It might be
I
better
can tell.
looking because they changed things for the Switch 2.
Yeah.
But
No,
at
I
the-
mean, they look great.
obviously, at the end of the day, I'm not gonna get a Switch 2 just for the physical carts. I mean, I think it's a big factor.
Yeah, like I said, I'm not gonna get any game key cards. If any games that have that, I'm just gonna get digitally
Yeah.
because it's like the same thing. So like, I've never played a Yakuza game. I'll probably get Yakuza 0 digitally on Switch too.
Yeah.
That might be my
Yakuza is really
actually
fun.
Yeah.
The biggest thing about the physical for me was if you could play Switch 1 games and how well they actually were, like, we could play them. And I heard really good things about that, so I'm kind of like,
Yeah, I'm actually like that's the coolest thing about the so far. Even cooler than or anything else or the mouse controls is just like I was really shocked at how it makes Switch 1 games run and look better. I did not think that so many like Mario Odyssey felt like a different game. Like it looked so good. I went to New Donk City and I was like everything
It's
the
smooth,
graphics
right?
look so good. Oh my gosh, I couldn't believe it. And then just like Tears of the Kingdom just runs so much better.
that's kind
So,
of
like,
what
I
I
was
was
very
saying. And you can
impressed
play.
by that.
Can you play it like? Isn't this true? Like where you can play like the Switch 2 upgrades, where those are like Tears of the Kingdom, Breath of the Wild, like 4K now, or like
Yeah,
not
they're-
full 4K, but like
4K 60 FPS.
because they're Switch 1 games, right? That's the big thing. I don't think Mario Odyssey is 4K. Is it?
It is, yeah, on Switch 2 it is. On Switch 1, no. Switch 1, no.
No, I mean like the upgrades.
It is, and it's free. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
They literally did a free update for Mario
course.
Odyssey. Now it like you can look on YouTube. Digital Foundry did a comparison video, and yeah, Mario Odyssey actually natively because of an update.
Yeah, it looks really nice. I think that's the big thing I'm getting it for would be, well, besides Mario Kart World, which I think I'm gonna play, but I'm not gonna play a lot.
Yeah.
Is like
Honestly, if you get a Switch 2, that will get me to buy Jamboree TV. I would play
Okay.
Jamboree TV.
Well,
It'd be so funny.
Isn't that a DLC?
It is, but
Yeah.
I mean, it's $20.
Kelly, shut up.
But
That's
so
a-
thanks for the resub, Epic Man.
You're not a girl.
you-
Get out of here.
We just beat Mario 64 co-op, Rainbow Cap'n. I beat the game.
Wait, you did?
Yeah, I didn't pull it for you. Yeah, it's playing the credits right now
Yeah.
for me.
let me go back down.
It's
I'll
literally-
meet that.
I literally feel
You won't
bad
be.
with-
I really wish you could see you like you could see me in the credits, but I think the different.
Yeah,
level.
I thought it would. That's why I thought that it pulled up for you.
No, because it's a different version of the Castle Grounds, I think.
I see.
Yeah. No, but I would want that. I think, but I don't think Mario Kart 8 Deluxe had any updates like that. But I assume it would be upscaled.
Yeah. Surprisingly, Mario Wonder doesn't have any upgrade, free or paid. I'm surprised by that.
I think games like that already run really nicely though. Like
True,
that's
I
the
just
thing.
thought that I just thought that they would like make it look like 4K.
Well,
That's
I
all.
mean, it's already upscaled probably by default, right?
Probably, yeah.
So it probably looks good enough they thought. Because the Mario Kart 8
Yeah,
Deluxe, for being a
I
Wii U
haven't
game, runs I
Yeah,
think
I
at a
haven't.
solid 1080.
Yeah, I haven't tested it, so I don't know about Mario Wonder. But
But that's really why I'm getting it is because it runs like better. Epic
what was
Man.
what was your bowling score? What was your bowling score?
Epic Man. Grab it.
Yeah, he said he just got back from bowling.
Let's go bowling.
I like bowling, dude. I hate how it like hurts the shit out of my wrist the next day. I wake up the next day with my wrist hurting.
I haven't did
It's
bowling in a
fun.
while, but there used to be a bowling alley, not where I live now, but the old place I lived at. Like,
Dude, Epic Man, do you have like a mental disability? 30 is horrible.
that's it.
Dude, 30 is so
Unless
bad.
it means like 30 in a row, but that's even worse.
30 points for 10 fucking 10 rounds. No.
Oh.
Yeah, Dally, that's like average. And that's not even like that impressive. Not to downplay that, but like 130 is about like what I do every single time.
Wait,
How the
130?
fuck does motherfucker get 30?
Wait.
30 points
Oh,
for
he
10
said 30, not
throws of the ball?
130.
That gets you 20 throws of the ball.
Okay.
What the fuck? I could
Okay.
actually, if you got me drunk and blindfolded, I could get at least 50.
Okay, hear me out. Me, you, and I think man should go bowling on a podcast.
I would do the bowling podcast.
The bowl
There'd be
cast.
so much background noise, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I know that. I think I might have streamed like once because when I hear about the place I used to live, there's a bowling alley literally next door,
Really?
and I went bowling.
I have my own bowling ball. I had it
Yeah.
drilled specifically to my fingers and everything, and everything.
But I haven't been bowling in like 5 years. But I think my best score I've done in real life bowling, not Call of Duty Sports, right?
Zach Boy says the lowest I've ever gotten in my life was like 70. 30.
I think I averaged around 120.
I'm not even lying. Like I went with like my 8-year-old cousin. I think he got 66.
Yeah, I think my best for my average was 120. I don't know when, but I always got like 70 or 80.
Yeah, 70, 80. That if I got a 78,
But usually that's like if I'm not counting times where I'm just playing for like fun. Like those are like the few times I keep trying.
for sure. The highest score I ever got was a 195, and I was so proud of myself.
Oh, it's
I was
hard.
so-
It's hard to get a good score if you're like, you know. unless
That
you're
was the
a
only
freak.
time in my life I got 4 strikes in a row.
Low
I got
rough.
4 strikes in a row, and I've never been able to do that again.
Okay, so you completed the game. So in theory, would we be able
Yep.
to see Yoshi now? Or would that be 120?
Yeah, we would be able to, but I don't know how to get on top of the cat. Wait, actually, no, the cannon only opens at 1.
If only we had no clip. If only.
But either way, man, even if you got a low score, bowling is fun. It's still just a great time. It's like the only like I don't know if you count it as a sport that I really like.
Yeah.
Arcade and bowling is a fun night. I've never regretted it. So I'm glad you had fun, Epic Man. That's I do want to go bowling again. Shit turned dark. Yeah, I do want to go bowling again.
I was testing some stuff.
$60 for an hour seems high as hell.
Does that
What the-
include like anything like else? Like
Yeah,
It
do
does
you
it-
get
the shoes and stuff?
do you get food included with that shit, dude? Cause I was like, that's
Because
crazy.
the place I used to go to, you could get like pictures of soda and stuff, drinks.
Yeah,
with
so yeah, when I went bowling, it was about $30 for an hour, but it was 3 people. It was me and 2 other people, and then we just got mozzarella sticks and
Yeah, it's kind of a thing. It is. I mean, unless it's like some kind of tournament place where like
$15 for 2 hours. Yeah, what the fuck? $60 for an hour? You got ripped off. 5 people? That's still too much, bro.
I mean,
That's still too much.
yeah.
Because like I said, we had 3 people, and it was 30 for an hour.
I know there's places that do like more than like the whole thing, like
Split it up.
laser tag, bowling.
It was $10 per person, split up.
But unless you're, but I assume you're just going to a bowling alley, not like a recreation center kind of thing.
Yeah, I've been to a bunch of different places. Yeah, you got ripped off, bro.
Yeah.
$60 for an hour, 5 people.
Yeah,
is
I'll blame Canada
insane.
on that.
And no food was included. That's crazy. And at the very least, you free unlimited.
Would you rather
That's
have unlimited
crazy.
bowling and no games, or unlimited bowling and no games?
No,
No,
unlimited.
it was a joke. It was a joke.
Yeah, I read
It
unlimited
was
bowling.
bacon joke.
You went with 5 people, it's $40. Yeah.
Well, I mean, shoes should be included. That's like a little literally
Almost
illegal.
shoes are almost included in every bowling alley I've been to.
Well, then that's like I think that's required.
I've never had shoes ever.
You have to, unless like I think it's either you have to include shoes or bring your own, but like they have to refuse service if you don't put shoes.
Yeah, what the fuck, dude? Were they made of solid gold?
What are these? Metal Mario shoes?
Yeah.
Dude.
Well, anyways, Rainbow Kappa, we've been doing this for. Beat the game.
All right.
It was fun, though.
I see.
I had a good time.
You have the most of the stars, so.
And now we have the program downloaded, so we know how to do it, so we won't run into tech issues next time.
I'm glad the bitrate got better.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, right. I don't know what the hell was going on earlier, but
Okay, so you won. I think that's.
Yeah, I would say so. I think I got like 35 stars. So versus 20.
Well, I guess before we head out, do you have anything to say?
Are you gonna kick me out of the voice?
No. Oh, I'm not sure.
Actually, I don't know how do we leave the server. I don't even know how to do that.
I can do it for you if you want.
I got it. Get me out! Escape! There
I
we
was
go.
gonna ban you.
No, maybe I remember when Epic Man and I played this. We did Mario 64 tag. That was pretty.
That would
We
be
can
fun.
do that next.
Yeah, we can.
It was fun. It was super easy. You just tag each other and shit.
Mods, ban
Who's
is
ever-
All right, but no. Had a great time. Yeah, definitely think we should do this again one day. Because I remember when we did the damageless race, we used to do a lot of these back in the day. Yeah, no, this was fun. It was nice having you. You there? Okay.
We're about to split chats. It's like when you have a conjoined twin and you're about to split. So thanks for hanging out. Rainbow Kappa's chat. You guys were cool.
I couldn't hear Zach at the last moment. Like he cut out for me.
You couldn't hear me. I'm sorry. I didn't know you couldn't hear me. I don't know why I didn't change any of my settings. But anyways, chat. That collab was supposed to be 1 hour long. It was 3 hours.
All right, hey Zach. Anyone's lurking? Appreciate you coming by. I was gonna do another segment, and we are still gonna do a little segment, but because this, as Zach is saying in his stream, lasted entirely 3 hours, which is great. I think that's falling. We're gonna do a little shorter version of that. We might do another stream down the road with that kind of full thing. But because this was entirely 3 hours of this, we're not gonna do that. But if you want to stop by, you want to lurk, hang out still, we'll be doing some miscellaneous games I have on my Steam account. However, they have become in Steam. Honestly, I don't know how many of these games I'm going to be doing because of this. But I do want to play one of these games at least. So we're going to do that. We're going to play through one of these games real quick. Not much. Honestly, I'm just probably not going to be. Yeah. But we're going to be playing, I think. I mean, let's see what game fits. Unity Hub. Why are you putting up Unity Hub? Let's see. Please. Again, man, I can't find it. Can't seem to find it, guys. Hold on. Screw it. We're gonna do this. We're gonna do this. It was on my list technically, anyways. We're going to be playing Wii Chess, which, for you guys know, has some lore to it. We're gonna be playing Wii Chess, guys. I have a confession to make. I have never played Wii Chess in my life, though I have played it. Because then, how would I know about the things I argue about? We're gonna play a little bit of Wii Chess. We're not gonna play much of it, to be frank. But we are gonna be playing like a couple minutes of Wii Chess. Because honestly, the stream did go on way later than I thought. I wanted to stream this for the 5th anniversary regardless. This was the original plan with this and just random games. And I was gonna plan on the original idea for the stream tonight was gonna be Mario 64, and then I was gonna play miscellaneous Wii games, serious games like Wii Chess, Wii Party, Wii Play, Wii Music. I was gonna do something stupid with Wii Music, but because this stream went so late as is, I'm gonna be doing this for a bit. If you want to learn, appreciate it. If you don't, I completely understand, but we're gonna be playing a little of this. I have played this game. I need to clarify because I played it on my modded Wii. I don't have a physical copy of it. It's only Wii series game. I don't think I have a physical copy or haven't had a physical copy of. This is a European only game. You think about that? How you get this game? It's one of those free games that you guys actually get. No one else gets. It's the only game, for those unaware, that didn't get a sequel outside of Wii Music. Why? Well, you'll see it. Well, you'll see it. So, just to clarify some context on what I know about this game. I played this game in my free time. Kind of, I think around the same time I was playing Uno on Wii here. Yeah, that's a game. It's better than the Ubisoft ones nowadays. It had a Wii speak support, I think, too, which was insane. But people say this game doesn't have Mii's. And I don't think it does have Mii's in most of the game. But I'll show you. I'll show you. And I'm not about but I literally think it's not. I don't even know if you can if this is patched. Is this patched? Please tell me it's patched. Please tell me it's patched. Please tell me my dolphin, my Ishiwi is patched. No, it's not patched. Nah, man, I didn't patch it. I'm gonna die this and I'll tell you this, but you can play online and it will ask you to select a Mii. And when you play online, you get to play your Mii character. Everybody that knows about this game, but hasn't played it, whenever I try telling someone about this game, they say, you can't play as Mii, it's not a Wii series. You can play it online, it doesn't make it a good Wii series game, it actually makes it worse than Wii Music. Wii Music doesn't even have a title screen, and I have my own whole tangent about that, right? But like, this literally is like a WiiWare game. Packaged as a Wii game. This pretty much is. I think this game is a WiiWare game. Though to be fair, this game has really good music, which says a lot for a WiiWare game. That is a Wii game. I don't think it's shovelware though. Okay, I do need to clarify one thing. I suck at chess. Surprisingly, a Wii game about chess, I just am not good at. Right? Like, I don't know how to play. Well, first thing is, I know how to play chess. I haven't played in a long time. And two, specifically, I haven't played chess in a long time, but I'm not as familiar with chess. I'm more familiar with backgammon. You know what backgammon is? It's like chess using the same board. A different board. It's kind of, but the same idea, right? Checkers and all that. Same reign. The big thing though is that I'm more used to that game. The rules there, but I haven't played either in like a decade. So when you're expecting me to play this, I'm not gonna take it seriously because I just got checked. Don't take that the wrong way, please. The most are running at mentally struggling capacities now after the stream. But yeah, if anyone's here lurking, watching, have any questions about me, treat this like a casual Q&A about what I'm doing. As I said, I started a new Discord, so if you're interested in joining, follow. I don't think it's a command setup, but I might make command later tonight after stream. I've been an affiliate for 4 years. I don't really do this as much as like an actual, I do this for fun and passion, like a lot of things I make. Because at the end of the day, I have the option for you guys to support me, and I love every one of you guys in a non-weird way. Imagine that, if you will, if you do. But I don't expect it, nor do I recommend it. There's way better things out there you could support. If you support me because you want to, that's why it's there. But at the end of the day, I want you guys to support something you're passionate about. Want to, share the world. And that stuff might be weird for some people. But for me, I'm passionate about it. Just gotta actually do it one day. Save this game, which is pretty funny. Bro, no! There. Oh, I died. Okay. I'm gonna save that game, though. The fact you can save the game. I guess, no, it's not a save game. It's like, it matters. It's like, you can see what happened. This music actually is like very, very good. Oh, I got texture dumping in this. Okay. Well, that's reassuring. I don't even know what I did to the save. It was jumped. Oh, that's... Okay, well, we're not playing Wii Party. Because that just broke. So many versions of Wii music here. I actually can try Wii No More. Something is patched. Can I simply turn that on, or do I not have my configuration set up? It's set up. Alright. That's the case. think I'm gonna wrap it up here, guys. Yeah, I think I'm gonna wrap it up here. Yeah, that's a good way to stop it. We are going to.
Very busy this past week. We're gonna have a Milky.
I think we are going to raid. Let me see. Let's raid Zach. We're gonna raid the guy that we were. Wait, 1 second. Let me see, because I know this guy. Okay, cool. So I was gonna raid the TheMilkyFinishers, but usually I want to raid JDAB, who is a guy who I do a fan game project for. She's at Rescue 3 exclamation mark project. However, some streamers, and he does this for a reason. You know, I don't question it. You need a certain amount of viewers threshold to be able to raid someone in some streams, and he does it more than one. Sometimes I just have no streamers, so I can't do it. So it's not like every stream I can do it. I love raiding people at any chance I can get though, because it's, you know, nice, helps people that, you know, I want to help. But Zach, I think is ending soon. If he isn't, you know, go ahead and watch him. But my combined policy is just say hi to him, say, you know, say you confirm my chat, whatever you may want. Your way of showing your support is just enough. He's a family friendly stream, so I can't endorse it. I can't enforce it. But just, you know, be on your best behavior. If you don't want to watch him, understandable. And all. But until next time, I appreciate him coming back for the affiliate stream. We'll probably be live again next week at some point. I like streaming like once a week nowadays. I'll be join the Discord because I will be trying to notify you guys when I do that or plan ahead. No promises. I'm doing this for fun. But until next time, this is Kappa. And Kappa's out. Okay, bye. Bazinga? Bazinga!
Our team converted a perfectly serviceable garbage can into a soggy, steaming pile of sickness. And, well, this is how you get flies. On the bright side, this is a great place to blow off some steam by slapping the proverbial paint off these bugs. Just watch out for King Watinga. He's not in a good mood. What do you mean that's not funny?